is that we have to go to a higher order than this. We can't use reason on somebody that's not valuing reason in the decision-making process. You would have, if you really want to have
I do value reason. It's just I'm talking about something that is not
lighter and faster and stronger.
No.
Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
All right, welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show, and what a show it is today. We have a pretty interesting topic that came out of kind of nowhere, but has kind of been brewing in the background on Twitter. If you're on Twitter and you see me on Twitter, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And if you don't have Twitter and you don't follow me on Twitter, then you have no idea what the hell we're doing and why you're watching anyways. But long story short, I met a gentleman on Twitter a couple days ago, and he seemed pretty cool, but we had a disagreement on some particular topics when it came to the LGBT plus community. I'm just going to call it the Pride community. Can we just call it the Pride so we don't have to worry about the letters? Is that cool? Is that cool? Everybody cool with that? Say yes. Everybody. Okay.
Yeah, works for me.
I'm just going to call it the Pride community. So anyways, he actually said, hey, let's, you know what? Let's actually do a stream on this because, you know, Twitter sucks for these kinds of things. And I happen to agree with him on that. Twitter does suck for these types of things. So we figured we would actually come on and talk about some of the pros and cons, what I think of the, basically, the Pride movement as a whole. And I can see now that my layout is a little bit off, and I'm not sure why, but I'll fix it here in a second. Let's try this. But anyways, I got, I have By the way, do you know that your name's on there? Is that okay? Because I'm showing the whole screen here. Is it okay?
Is that if you're talking to me? It's okay.
No. I was talking.
would actually.
I was talking to Atlas.
Come on.
Oh yeah, you can put Atlas up there. That's fine with me.
All right. No. It shows your name on the screen there.
Oh, if it's showing my legal name, then yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah.
put up there.
Let me see how. I'll blur that afterwards.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to blur that out because I just realized that when you came in, it's gonna show.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
All right. But anyways, Atlas, like I said, he wanted to have a discussion online, so I figured we'd get a whole panel together and have a little conversation on some of the things dealing with, like I said, some of I think are reasonable and valid issues with going on in the Pride community. And let me make this very clear. I think everybody that we talk to on Twitter has a great affinity toward the Pride community. When we all support equal rights, we all support much of the gay agenda, I think, which basically to me is just equality or equity, either or. But as a whole, there is some issues to be had, and I believe personally sweeping it under the rug isn't the way to go. It actually exacerbates things, and it does give the actual people that are, I would say, bigots and transphobes reasons to attack, and I think unnecessarily so. So that's kind of what the topic I want to deal. I want to deal with. So let me introduce Atlas real quick, and then I can introduce the other guest. So Atlas, real quick, tell us about yourself and basically your positions on this, really, in a nutshell. So then we can get to the other people and then go from there.
Okay. Hello, I'm Atlas. My YouTube channel is called Owls Aren't Birds. There's a funny story behind that, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. This topic is very important to me. I have people in my background who deal with these topics on a daily basis, some who still deal with discrimination. So, of course, this topic is a touchy subject for me, but I like to think that I can be mostly sociable about it. So a civic discourse, I think, is the best option, not some Twitter mosh pit.
Yeah, no, I agree. And let's be realistic. Some of these are volatile and maybe to some degree even contentious issues, even though I don't necessarily think they should be. I think people make them more contentious than they need to be because they, I think, uncharitably look at somebody's argument on Twitter, and because you're limited in character space, you cannot really suss it out and flesh it out fully in any articulate way with any kind of coherency or consistency. And that's some of the problems that you have on social media. But anyways,
absolutely,
I think this is a better forum for that. And we had a pre-show on my other channel, which was actually pretty cool. If you want to go check that out. But we were kind of talking about what we're going to be discussing today. But I also got in here John, and I've got Excel, right? Is Excel?
Yeah, Excel. You can call me Sean. That's my real name. Either or.
Okay.
I'll respond to you.
And you guys have been following along a little bit on this Twitter thread as well, or at least Excel has, or Sean.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And John?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I do have a few thoughts on it. Some agreement, some disagreement. But you know, I'm sure we'll get into that. So
fair.
All right. Let me. I'm gonna turn up you guys' volume a little bit here, just so the outside can hear you guys better. I want to be equal here. I don't want to overpower you by talking loud. Okay, so I increased your guys' gain a little bit. All right. So, anyways, let's kind of dive into this. So one of the things that started this was the image you see on screen right now with this particular thread where I said something that had some, I guess, views on it. I think it has like 15,000 views. That I said, my view is this. I grew up in the 80s. I was a Gen Xer, and in my day, so to speak, the goal of the Pride community was basically to be treated like anybody else. They wanted to be accepted for who they are, who they fell in love with, who they slept with, and that was basically the entire goal. Something very notable, notable or noble, I should say. And I think everybody back then, of course, was pushing for this. That's why when we were supporting the Pride community, it was, yes, of course, we shouldn't care who people fall in love with. We shouldn't care who anybody marries. We shouldn't care who they're attracted to, as long as they are adults, right? I think that's something that's across the board. Shouldn't even have to be as a caveat, right? But unfortunately, nowadays, it seems to be the case. But I said, actually, that used to be and by the way, the person who I responded to on this blocked me, so I don't even remember what the hell it was. It was like Rev Jesus or something like that. It was Christian, but he didn't even respond. He just blocked me. I said, actually, that used to be the very goal of the LGBTQ plus, just to be treated like anyone else, and no one gave a shit that they were attracted to who they're attracted to or who they identify as. Now it's all they want people to know. And then I said, massive shift there, to say the least. And I think you took offense to this, if I remember correctly, right, Atlas?
Not really offense. Actually, I was shocked that you said it, or at least in the way that was worded. I immediately went like, I don't think Steve means what he's saying here. And so I kind of jumped in, I guess, in a volatile way.
Yeah, well, but I did mean what I said by it. And I also I had a follow-up tweet somewhere along the lines, right. And I said, look, why my goal would be, I don't want anybody to give a shit about my sexual attractions.
Right.
I want to be ignored like the rest of society, right? I'm nobody special. Why should anybody care who I'm attracted to or who I want to sleep with? And why would I not want the same for anybody else? If they're part of the Pride community, that should be the same exact thing for them. Why should they care who they're with? That should be at least the very basics of what they were at least going for 20, 30 years ago. But now it's all they seem to talk about, and everything when you look is pride this, pride that. And I think my argument has become, it is oversaturated. It has become to the point where there's fatigue. And even if even being a patriot or somebody who loves the American flag, I do not want to see the American flag every single day placed it everywhere. It just gets over the top. It looks like it's not an organic type of change. It is something that becomes more nationalism, or a form of extreme patriotism or indoctrination, even, rather than just appreciation that you live in a free country. And so this is what my argument has been: is maybe the Pride community has taken some missteps, and that's what I really wanted to talk about tonight with you and the panel. Maybe come to some kind of centrist position of what maybe should be done if these are in fact missteps, or if you disagree. Now, I did poll my audience before we started, because I kind of wanted to know, where do you consider yourself politically? And right now it's at 18% right, 32% left, and 50% center. Now, I consider myself center, and so this is a pretty actually, I think, representative sample of my audience, and especially on Twitter, what I see. I don't necessarily associate with people that are right, left, center. It doesn't matter. But I think that the people that do follow me are probably more center. But anyways, let me read the super chat real quick, then I'm gonna turn over to you. Kawasa for 5,001 says, "We're at the opening of the show, and I already want to get drunk again, and it's 9 a.m. here." That's because you just like to drink, Kawasa. But nothing wrong with that. That's okay. Min says for $5, "I am busy at the moment, so I cannot join. I did send you the link that if you wanted to, though, Min. You are welcome to speak on my behalf, since you know where I stand on this, and you're a trustworthy man. I appreciate that. I would never want to speak for you. However, I do know your positions on this, and so I think I can relatively relate them to your satisfaction. But thank you for that, as somebody who's actually a member of the Pride community. But anyways, what do you got for us, Atlas, as far as your disagreements with this and what I said with Twitter?
Okay, so my current disagreement, well, first of all, the agreement, I think that we can all agree that, at the core, we all have an affinity for the community, as you said. I do take issue with that their values have changed. I think as the core community, the core LGBTQ plus community, or the Pride community, what have you, they are still geared towards equality and wanting to have that equal space and that equal rights that these people who are not LGBTQ plus already have. And it's always an uphill battle. Do I think that there has been some extremist examples to where some people go out of their way and they take it a bit too far? Sure, but that's normal with any community. With this specifically, I don't think there is a shift. And the reason I think it's public and it's where everybody can see it now is because of representation. That there is a more public form of representation now that people are advocating for. And the reason people can take it to be in their face, even though I don't really believe that's the proper way to put it, is that now it's out there to where everybody can see it. They've got the representation of movies. They've got the representation of books. There's gay characters in movies, gay characters in books, gay characters in video games. And the fact that they're there, yes, some of them can be ham-fisted, but the point that they're there is somebody that can identify with these characters and with these themes in these movies. So it's no longer just geared towards people who are non-LGBTQ plus. It now has them in there. And I think that this influx of content that is not how it was originally has some people disturbed, or has some people I guess, irritated by seeing it because it's like, oh, you're flaunting your sexuality in my face, or pretty much to that level of like, well, now you want us to know who you're with. And it's like, yeah, sometimes gay people kiss in movies.
All right, okay, so
Like-
so you want at least representation that people that have, I know we're just going to call it alternative lifestyle. I don't think there's anything derogatory with that, right? Alternative
Right.
lifestyles. Okay, so people that have alternative lifestyles want to have equal representations, that they do exist, that there are people that have gay couples that should be presented in movies and things of that nature. I think everybody agrees with that. I don't think that's actually a big deal. Anybody else on the panel disagree with that? 'Cause I mean, I'd like to see what we all agree with and what we don't. I don't have any problem with that.
The Pride community and the visibility, as far as I'm concerned, is it's a good thing that they're more visible now. It's a good thing that they feel that they can take their place in society. And I view the Pride sort of month or Pride days, weeks, whatever has been sort of decided to have by way of representation, is there to demonstrate that you can be who you are. You can present yourself to the world how you choose to present yourself to the world, and we're not going to detrimentally judge you for it. But more importantly, that we will, you're now part of the open society, acceptable society, and we will protect you. You can take part in society and share whatever your culture is with us. But there's also a set of social duties that come along with that, and because they're now part of the wider society, the social duties that they are now are incumbent on them is also to protect the expression and the opinions being voiced of other people who they may not necessarily disagree with.
Okay.
The problem I've got with Pride is that it's gone to a degree now where if somebody goes, well, actually, can I not have a multicolored rainbow dildo butt monkey reading Pride propaganda to my child at the local library that's paid for by taxpayers' money, please? Because that's exactly what we had in the UK. Now, the LGBTQIA+, it's such a massive banner, and the bit the bit where it's driving you're going to find very few people that would say, well, actually, no, I don't think gay people should hold hands in the street, or I don't think lesbians should be able to kiss in public, because heterosexual couples can hold hands in the street and heterosexual couples can kiss in public. There's no problem with that, and I don't think it should be any different for gay, straight, transgender, bisexual. We should have the same set of rules. But likewise, I would be arrested if I walked down my town centre wearing latex hot pants and a gimp mask. Just because somebody can put themselves under the Pride umbrella, I don't think they should get a pass for that, because it's them expressing themselves.
Okay, let me ask you, because my mod I was literally going to ask this same point that my mod just made. So I didn't take this from you, April. I was going to ask the same question. Exactly, I really was. But she says, I don't think anyone should have to be representative in movies, and I really don't know how a lot of gay roles are forced into some movies and shows. A great character. And I was going to say something similar, that if you have to redesign a role merely to fit a gay character or trans character in just to have some representation, that's not organic. And people, when they see a role, when you see a role like that, people, even the gay community, even the Pride community, has backlash. So it's like, oh man, that's just now it seems off. It seems out of place, right? Because I think people recognize what is organic and what is inorganic when it comes to these types of things. And when it's forced, it's not organic and it seems off. It seems like something's wrong there, right? So I think
it's like Blizzard. Like, you've heard of that, right?
Oh yeah, dude, I played the World of Warcraft.
Yeah. I mean, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, they have this thing now to every time they have something, they show up negatively in the news, they will release a new LGBTQ inclusive character.
Yeah, they retcon
It is
Soldier
on
76.
time. It's ridiculous.
And
They
that's
retcon Soldier 76, the most masculine character in the game, to be a gay dude.
And that's
that was after they got heat, and it felt inauthentic, just like Steve was saying.
You don't. And does anybody not see kind of an issue with that? I played World of Warcraft for 10 years. Okay, I was a badass mage. I was a fire mage when fire mage wasn't cool. Okay, I was good. I mean, literally, I was like second top mage on my server. Okay, I love PvP. I mean, but when it came to these types of games, sure, there could be characters that have storylines where the romance are same sex or things of that nature, and again, if they were organic, really nobody's ever going to care. Now, again, let's be honest here. There are the extreme people out there that are so homophobic that if they see two guys holding hands or something in a storyline about gay people, they're going to go nuts. We ain't talking about any of those people. I'm just going to put those people in a category of I don't give a flying fuck about and not have to deal with them, because that's going to be a completely different topic in my opinion. Right?
Can I just interject something there quickly, Steve?
Yeah.
Just super quick. So the notion that we're ever going to get rid of racism, we're ever going to get rid of sexism, we're ever going to get rid of sort of bigotry towards lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual people, the notion that we're ever going to achieve that, I think if we can all agree out of the gate that is an impossible task. If that's the objective of the Pride movement, then they're never going to hit.
I don't know. Okay, I wouldn't want to use the word impossible. I just think it's going to be I think it's like anything else. It takes a long period of time.
Yeah, but
it's going to be an uphill battle. Yeah, sure. Yeah. But education does help with that. Like, I live in Texas. Half of these people that are against homosexual people or anybody that's LGBTQ, it's always some theological discussion. It's people not willing to educate themselves beyond their holy book.
Agreed.
Is the 90% majority here.
And those are the ones I want to exclude those. I don't even want to like deal with that sect of it, because the religiosity, the religious fundamentalists that are just saying, being gay is bad. We all agree they're just shitty people. And so
absolutely,
there's no conversation to be had with that. You can't argue against somebody who's so bigoted, who thinks that God wanted Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. There's no dealing with those people. I just find it to be impossible.
I would be careful to castigate them all as bigoted straight out the gate. I think there's a degree of ignorance there. There's also the fact that a lot of these people have been raised in a very orthodox religious position.
Fair enough.
That's why I say education would help it.
But here's the thing.
What I mean is,
not to mention that, but as the resident, I guess I'm the resident right winger here, right? I'm close. I speak to a lot of people that are right wing. That's kind of why I wanted to be on this panel, to see people that had more nuanced centrist positions. Because when I say I'm right wing, I mean, I'm not your typical right winger. I'm an atheist. I just consider myself a libertarian. But if you did like the political compass test, I'm gonna fall in that bottom right corner somewhere.
Yeah. So you used to be a centrist a few years ago, but the left have picked up the.
No. Actually, I've actually stayed in the same place since around 2008. So, but I still have watched the same sprint happen to the left on this. So. First off, like as in terms of framing, when you guys you're using the word the Pride movement, to me, I feel like the Pride movement is completely separate from individuals that are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans. I think it's a completely different thing, and it's been overtaken by a radical ideology. And I think that's what you're going to hear probably from most people on the right, where
and from the left and the center.
See the Pride. Well, the Pride movement's no longer about. Whether or not we should just accept the fact that at Disney World, men are going to hold hands with each other, women are going to hold hands with each other, just like married couples are going to hold hands with each other. I think we're all fine with that. Usually our problems come with is they go beyond that, right? Like what some of the demonstrations they do look more like foreplay.
Yeah.
They want to do that in front of kids. And even the religious people that I run into on the right, like a lot of them, I like to call them conservatarians. Like, if you actually talk to them about, their personal beliefs, they'll say homosexuality is a sin or something, but a lot, at least way more than back in the 90s, will say, like, yes, as far as my religion goes, I'm going to call it a sin, but I understand now, it's none of my business. They can do what they want. I'm not going to complain about it or whatever. I'm going to look the other way, even if I don't like it, which is, I'm pretty sure that's what we used to call the word tolerance.
Yeah, that's I agree. That is tolerance. So let me ask you this though, because when you have, like you said, the religious people, they might have been indoctrinated into this, and I grant that. And to me, even if it's ignorant, it's still a form of bigotry. You could still be ignorant and still be considered to be a bigot if you have that kind of latent hatred toward a particular group of people merely because some book tells you so. Okay, so I don't think that the being ignorant or bigoted are mutually exclusive by any stretch of imagination. But I do agree that if you go to Disneyland, it should be normative enough where if a gay couple wants to hold hands, who the hell cares? But if they want to make Mickey Mouse gay, there's going to be a problem there. It's not because nobody cares if somebody's gay, but it's like that is just, it's changing the things inorganically. And this is like, I think, XL, you're pointing out, some of the things are just over the top that I wanted to talk about that I think the Pride community has maybe have gone a little bit too far.
As a layman, I just feel like it's being thrown in my face, and they're trying to accept things that I simply, they're not. they want me to believe things that go against my understanding of objective reality.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that I was going to say that I think that some of the issues are, one, they seem to go against what I learned as science. Two, they seem to again, I don't want to say that's all the pride communities. No, it's small percentage, but they're not being called out as much. And it is the ones going after kids. It is the ones going after talk about gender studies to kill children in a very, very, very graphic way. It is also the transitioning of children at a very, very young age who may not be competent enough to understand the decisions they're making, which may lead to long-term and irreversible damage to their bodies, including up to sterilization and other things. And these are things I think where people have pushback. If these things were not the case, they wouldn't be as pushback as there was. Go ahead.
I think what the Pride is doing in and around children is actually it's borderline suicidal for the movement. If they're going to start trying to jam an ideological wedge between children and their parents, if they're going to start advocating and funding sort of prosecutors who are going to start taking children away from parents who want to do something other than affirm their child's change of gender, you are inviting wrath, the likes of which you will never have seen, because parents will stop at nothing at defending their children.
And they are. That's what we're saying.
Of their children, and in the defense of their children, they will not give a shit where somebody goes, that wasn't me, that was that person over there. If you're under the Pride umbrella, the parents will pull that edifice down, crashing down around you. And it's a fight that you won't be able to win. If you're going to take the tiny percentage of people that can in our population that sit under the Pride movement, and then you're going to take the tens and hundreds of millions of parents who would die to defend their children, you can't win that fight. That has to be acknowledged going in, and that means that the Pride community has to police their own borders. If you don't want to be associated with that person, don't stand so fucking close to them.
But that's what I've been arguing on Twitter. And I mean, you all know Billboard Chris, who advocates a lot of this stuff. He advocates a lot of the same things, and it's because as a parent, I have to put myself in the role of what would happen if my daughter was this. If my daughter was trans, I would totally accept it, right? But if she was under 18 and she wants to have medical things done to her, I'm not in good conscience going to be able to condone that, and only because I don't think they understand the long-term effects of these things, and I don't think she would be competent enough at an age of 12 or 13 or whatever to make those kinds of decisions. And so I think it's up to the parents to say, no, this is something that we don't know if a child is capable of making these decisions. Maybe a very small handful are, but I think a lot of them do regret it later on. I mean, so Atlas, do you agree though that when I made this tweet is that they want people to say, oh, my sexuality is this, my sexuality is that. So they have to say, what is your pronoun? What is your gender? And now when it comes to children, I mean, I just watched something where this guy had a 4-year-old son. Now he has a 4-year-old daughter. And I'm like, how do you know at 4 years old? There's no possible way. He's just going to have a gay son. And fine, if the son wants to wear dresses and have gender expression as a female, nobody's going to really care, nor should they. That's fine. That's tolerance. But if the kid says, I want to have medical transitioning where I become a female anatomically, then he's not going to know what that means. It's not possible for a 4-year-old to understand those types of decisions.
Yeah, there's also some of the insanity in that is like even the data, the science shows, as far as I know, the desistance rate of gender dysphoria in children after they go through puberty is insanely high, right? It's in like 70-80%.
Yeah, it's high, and I think a lot of them
they turn into gay men or gay women, and that's fine.
Yeah,
it's also the bar has been set so unbelievably low for how people determine whether a child is or isn't transgender. I mean, just as a for instance, my son's 4, my daughter's 7. Not yesterday, the day before, in the back garden, it was really hot here. We were pushing like 28 degrees Celsius, and the kids wanted to get in the paddling pool. Great, no problem. My son decided to put on his sister's swimsuit. It was like a pink one piece, and then my wife put his hair in like pigtails. I'm sat there with a beer in the garden, rolling my eyes, and my wife thinks it's hilarious, and Jack thought it was hilarious as well. He was having a whale of a time. I don't think that means that he's
Right, exactly.
transgender.
Right.
But you could put that piece of information in front of a teacher in this current climate, who under their own devices would go, "Oh, I wonder if that kid's transgender. I'm going to explore this option," and not discuss it with the parents.
But isn't that because of ideology, religious, or excuse me, critical
I think that's absolutely
ideology?
because of,
critical.
I think that's absolutely because of the ideology.
Yeah. So let me ask.
Some people.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No. So I wanted specifically Atlas to respond to that, because this is one of the contentions we seem to have. There's another one we'll get to in a second, but on this particular issue, I would like to know if we all have a meeting in the minds that maybe the Pride community went a little bit too far when it started educating children on gender ideologies. And again, I'm not against gender ideologies as an adult. If you want to take a course in gender ideology, that's college. You should be exposed to whatever you want to be exposed to in college, and the best ideas win. I am okay with that. I don't agree with gender ideology, but you know what? It's college, right? You're going to be exposed to all kinds of different things. But they're introducing it now at K through 6, and that's a fact. This is not just me being hyperbolic or any kind of
they're not
conspiracy theory. This is what's happening.
Okay, so what I think we agree on more than we think here, because I am of the same thing that like there needs to be a wherewithal that someone needs to have before they make before they start changing their bodies, like gender surgery, like reassignment surgery. I can completely get behind the fact that like you need to be at a certain age threshold and you need to be competent, and for a lot of people that's unfortunate. I think where the pushback you get in the community is from the fact that like some people like feel like they know their gender from a very young age and they're recalling personal experience, and they want to leave this door open to be like, no, they should get it earlier because they can pass easier later on. And I think that's an argument that's the underlying argument I keep getting for this. Now, as for like parents like affirming a kid's gender identity, like if a kid says like, well, I'm a girl or something like that at a very young age, like they see what happens, like, and see what's going on, and like assess it as a good parent. Like that's always been my statement on that.
But the problem is that a lot of them want it to. Okay, so there is a fact of the matter to be had that when you go through puberty, obviously you're going to have major bodily and anatomic changes.
Yes, absolutely.
And sure, you can prolong those for a little bit without probably major ramifications. But anything longer than that, it doesn't just 10 years from now, we're going to have puberty blockers, and then 10 years, I'm going to change my mind. No, it doesn't work that way. And plus, it is a fact that these puberty blockers can cause sterilization, right? They're off-label.
Yes, absolutely is a fact.
Yeah, they're off-label. They're not designed for that. And again, I understand if there's a temporary reason to maybe like a couple weeks, a couple months to assess things. Oh, okay, well, maybe. But even still, when a child says, look, I identify as this gender, there might be other reasons for it, and unfortunately, I see a lot of this coming from the parents. This is my view. I'm going to just put my views on the table, and they're up for critique. And this is why I like this kind of panel, because everybody here is not condemning each other for having different beliefs. It's not like a panel where you have people going, "Oh, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're homophobe." None of those types of words mean anything when you're so insincere about the conversation that you want to shut it down. And that's what another thing we'll get to about the Pride. Some people in the Pride community, they just want to shut down the conversation, but.
Even when it comes from within their own community.
Even when it comes from their own community. Like Min, who just gave a super chat earlier, he's gay, and he agrees with me on this as well, especially with the children stuff. Kawasa 5001 says, there are stuff we're all agreeing on, and yet when we say that on Twitter, we're suddenly transphobe and bigot. What gives? Exactly. That was my point. Kawasa, 100%, right? But like I said, there are facts of the matter that if you don't do it at a certain time, it is much more difficult and dangerous to do later on. I do get that. And there are certain surgeries that some people have had success with, but the vast majority, I think, are not very successful. It doesn't get rid of the gender dysphoria, and at the very worst, it could actually make things more harmful because it causes more mental anguish. Because
I think it helps more with gender dysmorphia. Like gender dysphoria is the actual mental part of it. Dysmorphia is like you look at yourself in the mirror and you are disgusted actively by what you see.
I agree.
And that's normally where gender affirming surgery comes from, is like trying to alleviate that part. Yeah. And that's what's been shown to be effective.
Well, I don't think it's that effective, but
no.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, the stat, like the percentages, like it shows like it's a lot more helpful for some of these people. It alleviates these symptoms. It lowers depression rates. It lowers suicide rates. It's like it does help. Like, and it's plain on its face. Now, as for like, is it more helpful later on? Like, maybe there's some more studies to be done with that. But like, as in the short term, as currently is going, this works. It helps people, and there needs to be more research on it. I could go ahead and admit that, but there is an effect that you can immediately see.
Let's assume that. I'm going to give you that just arguendo, because I don't have the studies, and I'm not going to go research a bunch of stuff. The technical aspects. This is not really that critical. I'm just going to give it to her. However, as you said, research is critical. That these procedures, these medical procedures, are relatively new. We didn't have these as Gen Xers in the 70s and 80s. Okay, these procedures did not exist. If you said to somebody, "We're going to, make your dong into a vagina," people be like, "You're just insane," right? It doesn't work that way, right?
Well,
it is a massive improvement, and like it's a new thing.
But it's still very experimental, I think, and still has major complications.
That's true.
Well, it's also the case that the introduction of things like the puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapies for prepubescent children is now causing problems, because the surgeries have been developed on adults, that have been developed by essentially practicing them on adults that are anatomically intact, who haven't had hormone blockers or hormone therapy pre-puberty, and as such there is a certain amount of biological tissue there for the surgeons to work with. We're now in the situation where we've got children that have been taking puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy pre-puberty, which affects their development through puberty, which now means the techniques that the surgeons have in order to create the quote-unquote neo-vagina doesn't exist anymore, because we suppressed it. We suppressed the development of it. So the surgeries are nothing like as competent as, or as free from problems as you would think.
Well, do you think,
based on how they're presented in the media? But also, it's the case that, especially when you're dealing with children, in this whole scope of just the exclusively self-identification, children are not competent enough and able to take their pick within the free market of ideas. If you want to start talking about gender ideology at college and university and things like that, great, because you've got enough development, you've got enough miles behind you to be able to take part in the free market of ideas. But a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old can't do that. I can get my son and I can get my daughter to say pretty much whatever I like. I can manipulate them. I can control them, to a degree that you just cannot control another person who is able to take place in the market, in the free market of ideas, and assess arguments rationally and emotively. They don't have the capacity to do that. But the notion that surgery helps, as Steve, I'll concede that point on the face of it for a small percentage of people. But as this ideology has been kicked through our schools and kicked through society at large, we've got a huge number of people that are, it's a two-phase problem. We've got a large number of children who are identifying as transgender or two-spirit or non-binary or whatever the case may be, and then they're butting up against a load of people who are only affirming them, and then we're going down sort of routes of hormones and therapies and basically experimental chemistry on minors, and that to me is one of the major.
Woo! I'm awake.
Sorry about that.
I'm awake.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you caught me, man.
But I don't. Even if we concede that the surgeries do help, I don't think we can then. We have to look at how do we identify these individuals? How do we identify them? And there's such a high number of children who come out the other side of puberty who are gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatever. If you can't competently identify who those people are pre-puberty, post-puberty, then you don't have a justification to act in any direction. Because if more of these children come out the other side of puberty as being gay or bisexual or lesbian or whatever, then you are objectively going to be doing more harm than good if you intervene on every single one of those children who claim pre-puberty that they're transgender.
Is this one of those things that you think real quick that maybe it was just LGBT, the community, you know, if it was just that, there would be maybe less pushback, but when we added in the other letters,
absolutely,
it becomes a big tent. It becomes a really, really big tent where hang on, let me finish though. It becomes a big tent where each individual member may have different things they want to accomplish, different things that they're going for, and I think there's a tension even between different people in the Pride community because, again, I think that they have very different. I hate to use the word agendas because I know it's very laden, but I think that's a good word. That, you know, somebody who's trans may not have the same exact wants to see what they want to accomplish as somebody who's just gay, right? Excel, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, first off, one thing I was typing in chat, so I was trying to make like a layman analogy because I am a layman on this. I'm not a philosopher, right? In trade, I do computer science stuff, so. But I was just saying, like, I like tattoos. If I get a new one, it increases my mood for a while. I get to show it off. It's fun, like, and then eventually, like, the novelty wears off. And in order for me to get that boost again, I have to get another tattoo. This is an imperfect analogy, but I think some of the problems with transgender research is that what they have to deal with is response surveys for people, like, for a period of time after they transition. And then when we look at long-term issues, and these are things I want solved, I want them talked about. I'm hoping we can solve them medically in some way, but like they still have this absurdly high suicide rate, which again, this is kind of like a right-wing point they're trying to make, but I think it's a point worth making. And that's even for adults that transition.
Okay.
And so you want to make me think that there's, like, when I know that, and I also know the desistance of children that suffer from gender dysphoria. When I know that information and you're trying to get me to accept the idea that, oh, we have to trans the kids, like, I'm sorry, like, this just sounds insane to me.
Well, hey, let me do a segue, because that's kind of a good segue into the next kind of particular topic, because I think we agree that children are there's definitely needs to be more research.
It's too young for children.
It's too young. Again, that I think is something that's just should be common sense to people, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there pushing for these things for children, and that's why I think the Pride community has gotten so much pushback. The other things they've gotten pushback for is one of the things that you and I had a difference on opinion, and I have brought two females in here who kind of can relate to these things as I'm just going to say biological women, and that was the showering of biological women with men. There's
right.
There's another thing I wanted to talk about with the whole this other tweet, but we were talking about women that are in the athletic communities that's not it. Here we go. That are having to shower with biological men, and when I say the word force, this was happening on Twitter. People were like, "Oh, nobody has to force you to shower with anybody." But the reality is, if they're in,
I am going to mute myself.
If they're in these types of spaces where they have to take showers for like high school or for an event, and a biological male comes in who identifies as trans, at one time they were considered to be bigoted, transphobic. They couldn't compete if they didn't allow it. Because they would be going against the rules, so to speak. Now things are a little bit changing now, but this is something you and I differed on. I believe that as a biological woman, I can see issues with why I would not want a biological male showering me now. So I brought two women in that can talk about that. And let me introduce one of them. That is the amazing Erin.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Erin.
Can I just ask one question? Hi, thank you. Hi. Thanks for inviting me, by the way. I just have one question though on this. As I was listening to you talk, you're talking about the implicate your the having to shower. Where and when in high school does anyone have to shower?
I've had a lot of people tell me that
in a public communal shower or whatever.
Well, PE locker rooms in the physical ed locker rooms in the female showers, they were required to shower before they go back to their next class. Sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, I'll point out that disappeared after our generation.
I know that was but Erin's my generation though, so she should remember this.
But they had disappeared by the time I reached I guess junior high or whatever, because like we didn't have any
All right, but
facilities
let's say
like
it's
that
an
in
event.
elementary
Let's
school.
say it's a swim event.
Yeah, by the time I reached junior high and all throughout high school, they had disappeared. Like it was weird in our junior high to even see that there were showers there.
Well, here's an example.
So like again,
on screen, I'm trans, by the way.
I feel like this part of the argument is redundant.
Well, hang on. Wisconsin.
Wait, I addressed this. Steve. The issue here
can you turn,
is
one
a
second.
lack of school system taking care of this.
Can you turn down your gain? Your gain is super high. It's like.
Oh, is my gain crazy? Sorry about that.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's insanity.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. How do I lower this real quick? Let me go to my.
Just move it away and talk a little quieter, and you'll be
okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I apologize.
Let's go.
But anyways, I addressed this. This is a fault with the school. This is not a fault with the person involved. Take it from the perspective of a trans woman, and they're a trans woman, and they're going into a locker room. Why don't they have their own facilities?
No, okay, but some of
them, or even just dressing rooms,
or just dressing rooms.
Right? Like, why isn't there like a segregated area? Like, if you're so afraid of seeing someone else's stuff, there should be a way to prevent that. Why is everybody communally showering like that?
I'm not disagreeing with that.
That is a great point. That is a great point. Like if we want to push the theory or the idea that there are more than two genders, then why are there only two gender choices when it comes to matters like this?
Yeah, someo's going to be forced into something that's going to upset someone, because if you look at the same thing with, let's say a trans male goes into a male locker room. So is everybody going to suddenly turn around and be equally upset that a trans male is in a male locker room?
Unfortunately, our architecture doesn't change on a sixpence when the social etiquette does. The architecture comes behind that, and we can't expect every school, every swimming baths, every gym to suddenly start moving around physical bricks, blocks, and mortar.
So they shouldn't exist?
Well, no, I'm not.
Right, because what you're arguing here is that like they shouldn't do anything about this, because like this is the fault. It's like it's the fault that the trans person exists so that the situation happens.
I'm not blaming the trans person here. What I'm saying is that if you've got a school where you've got a class, let's say for argument's sake, of 30 girls that have just come in from a swim, and they go into the girls' locker room. You've got 30 girls who want to go into the locker room, and the argument has just been made that, well, since when is it mandatory to shower? Well, it doesn't matter if it's mandatory to shower or not. There's a facility there that was originally designated for biological women. Some of them may want to shower, some of them may not want to shower. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of them are not going to want to go in there and take their clothes off when there's a big swinging dick in there, transgender or otherwise.
And that was my point. And that was exactly my point.
It's not the fault of the administrators of the school, because they can't change the texture of reality, because we now suddenly have this issue of biological males wanting to go into female
fuck the trans person, right?
No,
like fucking for existing,
well,
right?
Hang on.
No,
not here's my question though. Like it's not mandatory. I don't know of any school, any whatever district order where it's mandatory.
Let's assume it's not mandatory. That's irrelevant.
Okay, but furthermore, like I'm saying, like Steve, you want to point out like Steve's generation, I'm just a few years younger than him. But even when I was in school, if someone wanted a shower, they would have been weird. Like,
right, yeah.
So freaking
and I'm a little younger than you guys are, and that's the same way. But I think one thing would be like stepping away from the shower part, only because it's literally like the most common issues that are coming up now, whether it's athletes or locker rooms or whatever it is not necessarily the actual shower part itself, as much as not having private spaces to undress. Like you're having to undress in front of everybody. And so when it's all biological women, the issue isn't as bad. Like there's still going to be people that are uncomfortable because there isn't like, say 3 small dressing rooms where people can use them if they would like or whatever. The issue right now that a lot of people are coming in, into contact with or having, to go through is the fact that the locker room is just one big room, and people are used to just being in there with biological women or biological men, and now it's like if you feel uncomfortable, you can't speak about it, and it puts everybody in an uncomfortable position. And I don't think it's the F the trans person, or I don't think people are trying to say that part. I think what's happening is like the 1% of the population is getting a very large voice right now, the majority is like, if they speak up or say anything, then, you know, they're condemned. And I think that's, you know, that's something that
but what,
I don't know.
okay,
In my opinion,
the whole.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No,
And by the way,
like,
wait. By the way, hi Goose. Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show.
Oh, I thought I recognized that voice. Hi, Goose.
I know when he sees us talking, everybody's like, just ignoring, you know, it's like, you know, welcome.
My voice is a little bit.
Okay,
my voice is
real quick.
right now.
I want to go ahead and say, like, these things, like, once again, this is a heated topic for me, so like I'm gonna step myself back a little bit on that. John, apologies on that, but the reason I say that is because these situations, right? These situations are put there because people are behind on the times. And so it's not the fault of the person who is actually this thing, who now has to deal with themselves and be themselves. And this environment is not conducive to them existing.
Well, not necessarily.
And that's why I have a problem with it.
I have an issue with that because
I kind of agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, nothing has evolved to understand and handle this as properly as we all should. You know, and it's still kind of new in a lot of aspects.
Well, that's of course that's the case. But I mean, but Goose has been around for a while in the athletic sector, right? So she's done the sports and she's seen some of these things, at least hypothetically. So she can speak at least from a trans person coming into as biologically male. I can speak from the military, right? And if you see what's on the screen here, this is something that the Army transgender training, it says naked men identifying as women allowed to be in female showers. Again, this is a little bit hyperbolic. I admit this comes from a Christian thing, so it is hyperbolic. But it has to do with the integration of transgenders into the military, where if they identify as a female soldier, they do shower with them. Now, in my day, birthings were separate. You had the males and the other females. And it was open showers. There was no stalls. There was no privacy. It was just shower head, space, and then you showered as a group. Okay? Again, my day, which was way back when in 87.
Okay. Before we move on,
let me finish real quick because it was important. Because when a man walked in to the female birthing, they have to say male on deck or man on deck, or male in birthing. They have to at least announce themselves that a man is coming in because a woman might be changing. Now, because of how things that you have said, might be the new thing. That may not be the case because they're not treated as, obviously as a male because they're identified as a female, but they're still biologically male. And that's the difference that you and I were having on Twitter of what that actually means, right?
Right. So before we move on, we can go ahead and we could say that we can table the discussion on like high school showers and below.
Sure. Fine. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I don't think that's an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my point. So like right now with biological men, what I was trying to get at here is that biological men doesn't matter in this context, because just saying biological male doesn't mean anything. If you're trans, you're trans. So if you're going through this and you are in fact trans and you are integrating into the gender that you feel is your gender, it doesn't matter your biological beginnings. You are now changing yourself for this.
But the gender doesn't change the biological sex, right? I mean, I think we all should agree. This is again.
I think hormones would beg to differ.
Well, no, hormones don't change those things.
Before we jump into that discussion, because I feel like that's a whole nother ball game here in this discussion. I want to just elaborate on something here. Okay, like you were mentioning how things were, back then or whatever, how everyone was right next to each other or whatever. Mm-hmm. But now every public changing room, like whether you're at like a water park or a public pool or wherever, okay, or a place where just anywhere where people are going to be taking clothes off, there are stalls for people to go in, or little changing stalls. Right, yeah. And here's my point though. People are encouraged to use them when they feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Well, people feel uncomfortable when they know for a fact, or they believe for a fact, that everyone around them is of the same gender, and that's why these things exist. Mm-hmm. These things have existed long before this was an issue. So what is so different? Like, why can't they revert to using these stalls out of uncomfortableness, like they have been encouraged to do all along? What is so different about this that is not good enough?
I know. Ask Atlas.
What are you talking about?
What are they hoping to accomplish? Right. I mean,
Well, who is trying to accomplish what?
Okay, no, okay, so like I was saying, like say for example, like if you're going to a water park, okay, or whatever, or like, and you go to change into your bathing suit. Well, there are some people who feel uncomfortable doing that regardless, even if they believe for a fact that everyone around them is of their same gender. Okay, they will still use these changing cells because they're uncomfortable. So what is so different that these changing cells, this option is not good enough for people now if it's over the trans issue? Why is that not good enough?
I think that's perfectly fine. But let's do you have, and there are dishonest agents out there. Let's just be frank. There are dishonest agents that do take advantage, and they'll change right in the open area willfully, right? Just to make other people, I think uncomfortable. I mean, we look at that. Remember Jennifer Yaniv, whatever her name was. She was
Jessica Yaniv.
Jessica Yaniv. Yeah, she was somebody who was obviously going out of her way to make people uncomfortable, right?
Oh, I wasn't even thinking that the person who was trans. I was thinking that everyone else was complaining about this. Why can't they just go into one of the dressing room cells? Why is that not good enough?
That's what I was
I got you, because I think
that infrastructure may not exist yet.
Yeah, or they might say,
see where I live.
Well, then they should build it, shouldn't they?
Go ahead,
right, exactly.
You can't just.
You go to any water park.
So these people can't exist in these spaces until these things are built, is what I'm hearing.
I'm telling you that the novel part of our society that's ascendant is going to have to demonstrate a bit of fucking patience. Whilst we,
I think that's an absolute crock of shit.
Well, things don't happen overnight.
They don't happen overnight.
Well, no, they don't happen overnight. But why can't these people go to their own stalls? Why does it have to be these people can't come here? Because it really sounds like this is and I hate to say it, but this does sound like a segregation talking point just retrofitted onto trans people.
But it clearly is not. I mean, there's no even comparison between the two.
No. I absolutely think there is, because you can't exist in these spaces because it makes us feel icky.
Difference between people that have different skin colors and the biological people differences between the people that have different sexes is way more extreme.
The problem is that you have to change people's minds before you change the infrastructure. That's the problem.
I agree,
and
100%.
It's quicker to change the infrastructure than to change people's minds.
Well, and I think also, like, when you have the dressing room, like where you have at least where I live, there, like at our public swimming pool, there's literally only 3 small, tiny little stalls where people could use them in the entire locker room. So I think part of the issue too is that, let's just say the people that feel uncomfortable are going to use the changing rooms. There's not enough for people to so it's like, okay, well then we're going to wait or whatever. And so I think, part of that needs to change, but
that's, I mean, I'm sorry that I feel like that's just something they'll have to deal with. I mean, if they're gonna, but that's my personal bias on the matter. Okay, fine, I can grant that. But like, I still though, like, okay. Now, if we're talking swimming pools or whatever, first of all, if there's a trans woman in the locker room with you, you're not gonna know that there's a trans woman, because I've seen some trans women who are just drop dead gorgeous. They look way more feminine than I ever.
Very passable.
You're not gonna know. Yes,
right.
You're not gonna know. So I mean, here's the thing: unless you're at the door and you're demanding, like, genital checks or something, chances are you've already changed in front of a trans woman several times by now.
I think that's. I even said that before. That I was like, look, it is a lot of dependent on passability, and unfortunately, that this is a societal thing. But Akima Makiba says, well, being uncomfortable sounds like a you problem. But this goes back to what I think the argument was on Twitter, is that about. I was asking Atlas, do you think women have a right to at least express a concern that they shouldn't be in the same spaces, like example in the Army training manual here, or in prison, because there have been transgender women housed with female prisoners? My only question was, do you think that the women there have a right to be concerned, or is just merely they need to get over it? And you said the word icky, I think the word you used.
Yes, because I was responding to the way that you put it. If you want to pull the tweet up, we can go over it.
No, let's go. I don't want to take things out of context. So,
okay, I'll go ahead and just. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that my argument was saying, if there are women that are expressing concerns about this, what are the concerns that women have, and should we be listening to them? And my thing is, yes, I think they have valid concerns, because I differ with you. I think that a biological male stays a biological male their entire life. It is immutable. It does not change. No chemical, no operation can change that. They are still biologically male, although they identify as female. Now, I have no problem separating gender from sex, even though back in our day, usually they were synonymous. If you said gender, it meant sex. There was really no difference between them. They were just used interchangeably. But I understand now that in modern times, there are reasons why you may want to differentiate. I get that. If you want to pick one schema, that's fine. You want to pick the other one, I don't care one way or another. But biologically, this is what I think the pushback has been, is that when the ideology is such from the gender studies or gender ideologies that say, oh look, you can actually change your sex, your biological sex. You are now a female in every single way. That's where I think most people that are centrists go, no, that doesn't work that way. I think most people that know about biology say that doesn't work that way. Now, obviously, that's not everyone. I have a doctor here and there that says otherwise, but
no, wait, real quick. So the problem here is that there is this notion that if we have trans women who go into a women's area, for instance, that they should be the one that leaves and that they have no facilities to go to or whatever recourse. But let's go. No, give me a second. Let me get to my point. So let's take your example of the prison thing, to where there was an instance where someone was taken advantage of in a thing because someone claiming to be one gender was actually using it as a ploy to actually get at someone. That is predatory behavior in a jail setting. I think that once you go into a jail, you have certain things that you lose your rights on. Now, when it comes to like public restrooms, I don't think every single trans person that goes into these settings to where they're not normally accepted in, that they have something evil in mind, or that they are thinking of perpetrating some sort of sexual violence. I think that's a fear-mongering statement from people who normally, and I mean normally, talk about these topics, because I don't think you're meaning this, but when people normally go to these talking points, it's normally, hey, do you really want your wife to go into a restroom where there happens to be a man in there? Like, oh my God, can you believe it?
Atlas, I have a sincere question from the right wing
so do I.
when I get a chance.
Go ahead. Go Excel, then Aaron. Then.
All right. My question for you is, do you think there's a difference between a man that has not done any surgery, has not done anything to change his hormones, but has decided that man identifies as a female? Do you see a distinction between people like that and then people who have gone through the surgeries to make their body present as the sex they wanted to present as?
I think that a degree of sincerity needs to be present. I don't think that someone could just walk up to a restroom and say, I identify as a woman now, and then step through the door. I would not agree with that. But even then, even in those contexts where real quick, I don't want to interrupt you.
I just want to, because you answered my question correctly. I just wanted to further clarification of what you said before you go on further. Do you disagree that there are people that are, present as a man, don't do anything to do? Well, I mean, they might wear, kind of dress up as a woman, that consider themselves trans, and there's a large, or at least a vocal segment of the trans community that believes that, yes, that person is just as much of a woman as the trans woman who actually went through the steps to present as a female in a way that we could recognize.
Okay, so that's where I was getting to. But thank you for having me clarifying your question for me further. So I think it's a ridiculous notion that in a restroom that has stalls, that there should be a separation of gender, period. But that's a more extreme point. I don't think that's a necessary thing in buildings, that you need to have this, because you have stalls, you have the infrastructure. It would save less space, or if you want to make another restroom, make another restroom. Okay. But I think anything on just a trans man entering a male restroom, I think is just absurd to think they're a deviant versus anybody else.
I have a question on that then.
Can I give an answer to his question? For granted, I'm not a member of the trans community, okay, but I would think though that there would absolutely be a difference between someone who's not making any efforts to go through the steps of being a trans person, as opposed to someone who is. I would even argue that
do we all agree
someone
on
who
that?
claims I would even argue that someone who claims that they're trans but they make no efforts other than dressing in the opposite sex clothing, they would be a cross-dresser, right?
Well, it goes into the mental states, which I was going to get into at some point. But let me ask you this. So Goose, you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm just driving, so I was muted because I didn't know if you guys could hear that I was driving.
Yeah. So let me ask Atlas this. Let's suppose Goose is in a space where somebody who's trans comes in and they are undressing. Let's say they have every right to do it. It's a female space, but they've given access to that space. And Goose says, "Look, I'm uncomfortable with this, so I'm going to go extricate myself and go to somewhere else." All of a sudden, she's labeled transphobic. Do you think that's right?
No.
Okay, then we agree on that I think that's a big issue because that's what I'm seeing. Because we see people like, if, for example, if she has an issue with it, that's her issue. She has reasons for that. That's my whole argument. She might have reasons for this. That doesn't mean she's transphobic. Doesn't mean she's bigoted. And I think that's
absolutely. I can absolutely agree with that.
That
doesn't make it transphobic.
That's a huge step right there.
I think what does make someone transphobic is that they got to go like, oh my God, they let a trans woman into that restroom, and then it becomes a whole big problem. But if it's like, hey, I feel uncomfortable that there is someone here, you could feel that towards anybody, even of your own gender, then you decide to leave, then that should be absolutely acceptable to do.
And there's a great point to be made on that, and I think what Aaron was talking about, the actual people that are trans, I do feel the plight that they go through, and I think a lot of people really do. But I think there's a lot of dishonest people out there that are taking advantage of that, and there's not enough pushback on those people because they're making it hard for everybody.
The lived experiences of those people.
We don't really have percentage on those people.
Yeah, and those people aren't going to go through the steps of taking hormones.
That's my point. That's my point. They
and
don't.
everything else. I mean, they should be easily identified.
Where do we draw the line? I think is the point.
But the gender critical theorists have advocated that it doesn't matter whether they do or not.
Absolutely, because it's a social construct.
Yeah.
Can I just?
Yeah. Not informed biology at all.
Well, I think it should matter. It absolutely should matter because as long as there are regulations in place, there will be people who exist who aim to undermine the regulations. You know, I mean,
absolutely, that's right, Aaron. I agree.
Completely. I agree.
So you have to have something to base it on.
Guys, I think John is trying to talk.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to push back a little bit on there seems to be a little bit of dismissiveness from you, Atlas, on you're saying, oh, just because they feel uncomfortable, this person then doesn't get to change. Well, yeah, having a biological male in a female.
Wait, aren't you just arguing for the same thing versus in the other direction?
No.
Hang fire. I think the reason why people feel uncomfortable, not just them feeling uncomfortable, is critical. So just as for instance, you brought up the fact that, well, hang on a minute, how is this any different from white women saying that they didn't want black women coming in women's bathrooms?
That is not what I said. I was taken out of context.
Was it? Oh, sorry if it was. I apologize. But my issue is here that the reason, according to the women that I've spoken to, my wife included, why they would feel uncomfortable having a biological male in a woman's space, especially where they're disrobing, is because of the inherent threat that men, not all men, but men, have against women. I mean, and I'm not suggesting that a sincere transgender person is going to perpetrate a crime against a woman in a dedicated space. The problem is that women have no way of identifying if that is a sincere transgender person or not, sans external characteristics. Mm-hmm. And if the social standard is self-identifies as, then that women's space no longer exists. The social consensus right now, if I walked into a women's changing room without trans ideology set aside, the reason that I wouldn't really have the opportunity to perpetrate an attack against a woman is because if there are several women in there, they're all going to, people are going to watch a man walking through a door labeled woman. There's going to be other women in there who go, what the fuck are you doing in here? Get out. And it makes it much more difficult for a biological male to walk into that space and perpetrate an attack, right? But if it has become socially acceptable that anybody walking through any door that can no longer be challenged, then that inherently makes that space much more dangerous. It's a space where, we have.
Wait, no, Aaron, please let me answer this first, if I could.
I'm kind of angry, so okay, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much, Aaron, for your grace.
we had Catholic priests that we have people who have gone through, predatory people who have jumped through so many hoops in order to gain access to potential victims. Are we really so naive to think that we're not going to have somebody who, if we lower the standards so low, and where I agree with you is where you've said, actually, no, I don't think a person can just identify as X, Y, Z and walk through a door. I agree with you there, but I think we're at the point where there needs to be a little bit of pushback so that we don't end up in that situation. Now, I don't think, and I want to stress this, I cannot stress this enough because I've been down this road before. I do not think that sincere transgender people are any more of a threat to women than biological women are.
Agreed.
They're not.
I think everybody agrees with that.
I agree.
Hand
Yeah.
on heart,
I think it's the extreme
sincerely
people.
believe. But our social conventions are the spaces that we've carved out for women do exist for a reason. And if I can just walk through any of those social barriers with very minimal effort, then everybody else can as well.
Okay, two critiques of your argument real quick. One, reverse the situation. Let's stop talking about trans women walking into a women space. Let's talk about a trans man walking into a man space. Does that change your argument in any way?
I would be very uncomfortable with that.
Well, I would be uncomfortable with that because I think it puts me at risk.
Do you think that they're going to be a predator?
No,
No,
but I think it puts
for
me
other
at risk
reasons.
of potentially being a.
Well, I mean, you don't know that because this trans woman, this trans man could possibly be one of these people taking advantage, and just because they pass doesn't mean a difference.
Nope. I actually agree on Atlas here. As a man, a trans man being in my locker room, I'm not going to give a shit. But I also attribute that to the difference between men and women.
So if a trans man who walks into a dressing room who has gone through some sort of who's clearly put in some sort of effort, potentially had surgery, they're on hormones or whatever the case, then no, actually that wouldn't make me.
I mean, you don't even have to say effort on this point because it's a woman, right? So inherently the men would feel a lot stronger in that scenario. And I think it's because it's a women's scenario. Okay, wait, sorry.
I'm not arguing hard biology here. What I'm arguing is the social convention and the social etiquette. And the thing about
no, I think there is also an element of let's protect the women here that I think that the women in this room could go ahead and speak upon, that there's something more to this here, that this is like a protective urge. It's not anyone's right to go ahead and be like, well, I guess trans men are okay in a male space, but trans women in a women's space could potentially be dangerous for the women. And I think that's a fundamental.
Here's my whole thought process. Like, you gave the example, you spoke about a situation where an attack, a possible attack or whatever. Okay, so here's the thing. You said, well, if they're noticeably a man, and then they will try to get in the locker room or whatever, someone says, hey man, get out of here, okay, yeah, but first of all, these are public areas in which we're talking about. So
we're not talking about private areas,
right? So if there's a trans woman in there and then they suddenly get overcome with their male urges, or if they're faking or whatever and they just happen to pull it off quite well, I don't know, and then it's obvious that they did this just to be able to get alone and attack women. Well, there's other people in the locker room. Do you think they're not going to sit there and say, hey man, get out of here?
No, of course.
But hang on, I think it distills down to this though. What is the criteria for socially acceptable conditions for somebody who identifies trans? If they're but the ideology is that if they merely state it, they are that, and according to modern critical gender studies, and that's something that they do push.
And according to me, a trans man is a man, and a trans woman is a woman.
Which I don't know what that means to you then, because
what
I hear
that means.
Well, hang on.
Is that real quick? I'll let Steve finish. I'm sorry.
Because I hear that a lot, but the problem is we have words that describe things, and words have usages, and through history. In biology, the term male and female meant very specific terms, usually having to do with the gametic sex, whether it be the ovum or the spermatozoa. But it's those with the male and the female. The male produces the small gamete, and the female produces the larger. This is generally how it's always been in biology until recently, apparently. But when we say somebody's a woman, are we looking at it from an externalist point of view or an internalist point of view? Are we looking at, if I look at Goose or Aaron, I'll say, look, they have female genitalia, they're female, I'm going to call that a woman. But you're looking at it as if they identify as a male, right? Emotionally or mentally, because it's no longer a physical condition, it's a mental condition. It has to do with the mentality they have. You're saying now that they are, we're going to call that them men. So now these words are so ambiguous as I don't even know what they when you say a trans woman is a woman, what is meant by that?
Well, yeah, so like these words, like she said, are cultural. These words evolve over time. We invented words. And so over time, these words and their definitions will evolve. Now, as science progresses and as we start to understand these things more, we should be able to progress our definitions and our understanding of these concepts that we ourselves created. Yes, there is a biological aspect that we go ahead and we assign people at birth, but the gender itself, this isn't hard to understand, I don't think.
What do you want to call somebody who is putting aside any accidentals, okay? Like the inability to have offspring, like infertility. Put aside the accidentals. If a woman can physically give birth to a child, what term do you want to give that particular person? What are they?
A woman.
Okay. So when I hear the word woman, it means to me somebody that can give birth. That's how to me, that is what it means. Not necessarily.
Well, or at least you possess female traits, in which case you would be able to give birth. That doesn't necessarily mean that you, as a concept, are a woman or a male.
Okay,
or a man.
Right, again, yeah, because trans males give birth too. I would say it would if I hear
because they're biologically women.
They give birth, they're a birth giver.
But they're biologically
but they have
women.
the biology. Gender is not necessarily biology.
We're not talking about gender. We're talking again. The whole.
But thing, I think you're missing the point here. Is that we're not talking about the biology as the defining factor. We're not. We're talking about gender.
Okay, but we're talking about what words you want to use, right? Because
and we're talking about gender in which male and female, like man and woman, are genders. Like if you identify as a man, you are a man. If you identify as a gender, if you identify as a woman, you're a woman. If you identify as someone who is bigender, there's also a thing called bigender. Like, it's not as simple as biology.
Okay, but again,
do this. Don't refer to either as male or female. Refer to either as X or Y.
Trying to get in here as well. He's very politely raising a hand.
Yeah, I saw.
In the chat.
Go ahead, XL. XL. He raised his hand.
Sorry, I had my mic muted hard on my headset. No, the reason I raised my head is just based on what you are saying, Atlas. What do you say to transgender people? Like, I'm not even going to bring up Blair White. She's obviously probably the most right-wing prominent transgender person on the planet. But like people like Buck Angel or like the offensive tranny, these are trans people that like, what they say is, I understand technically, like it's a trans man. I'm a woman with a mental issue. If that's okay, like I have no problem with that.
I wouldn't frame it as a mental issue.
But it is mental.
But they do. They do.
It is mental.
So it's just a mental, right? But it's not a mental. Okay,
that's what they say.
Do you mean mental issue or mental health issue?
No, they describe themselves as they're trans men that understand that technically they are women that have a mental disorder, and they resolve that by transitioning.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
it makes them, and a lot of them say when they accepted that fact, it made their life a lot easier.
Yeah,
they weren't angry at the world for the things that the world was saying, like what we're talking about with bathrooms, right? Or especially sports.
It helped alleviate that mental discomfort, that dysphoria.
And this is where I say, like, this new ideology where, like, what you're saying, trans women are women, trans men are men, I don't think it's helping them.
I don't think it is either.
Because I think it's actually making them angry. It's what makes them be protesters. I actually think it is causing more pain on them.
I agree. And that was a point that I raised. And
I heavily disagree here.
But he's given you examples of where it actually was more beneficial for them to realize it, because these are scientific facts, man.
Right? Yeah, right? But you realize that individuals are not the whole.
Okay, but you do. The point I was making.
Even public individuals that are celebrities, technically, I guess.
But the point I was making.
Hold on. Are they wrong then? Are they wrong for saying that they think they're technically a woman?
No, I think personally they might believe that, and that might actually be true for them. But to sit there and say that that represents everyone that has gender dysphoria, their specific experience is now above everyone's experience.
I get it. So yeah, we're talking about subjective lived experience now, which is something I reject, and we're just going to disagree on.
Well,
that.
again, I'll get to Goose in a second, but it goes to what we think these words have utility. To me, the word woman used to mean something that was very specific. Nobody ever questioned what that means. And now
used to be.
I understand this, but now it's so ambiguous that I don't know why it's been watered down to where we have to wonder what the hell the woman even is.
You've been saying biologically female.
Right.
Like you could say biological female or biological male, and there you identify what gender they were born with or what sex they were born with, and now we have gender.
Okay.
That like you're already identifying the exact same thing. It just has a different word now.
You said trans women are women. You're talking about gender.
Yes, they are the concept of a woman.
But you're talking
about
the
concept of gender.
But hang on, that's their mental state. They're still physically, biologically male, correct? They're males that have transitioned to female. Is that correct or not?
We can't.
You are saying
biologically. No, wait.
The point, Steve. You're missing the point here, Steve. Biologically male, you can just say if someone's biologically male, you can say you're biologically male. But if they identify as a woman, the biology doesn't fucking matter.
But you're missing. Okay. But,
yeah, exactly.
No.
You said mental state. I'm sorry. So if there's a trans woman, okay, is it the penis alone that attacks someone, or is it the mental state that attacks someone? So if their mental state is that they're female, then what's the problem?
Okay, again, we understand in biology, there's the male of the species.
We're not talking about biology here, Steve.
You keep interrupting me, though. We are talking about biology.
Steve. No, we're not talking about biology. We're talking about gender, fundamentally.
You're talking about people that are born biologically one way that identify differently. Is that not what transgender is?
Yes, but what they're identifying as is gender.
So the biology is relevant then, isn't it?
But biology has to be relevant.
That's why I said biology is irrelevant.
No, it's relevant.
I said it has to be relevant.
No, it has to be relevant.
Cultural connotations
to
each word only come about through cultural annotations. They're not if you're born female, you're not inherently, born with these I don't know, pre-terms or whatever, or pre-understood thoughts of what that means. That's cultural that applies it. That's where it's not biology anymore. That's when it's cultural.
But women, you're talking about the concept of the blank slate, tabula rasa. We're not a blank slate.
No,
we have very, very significant biological drivers
through evolution.
So why are there trans people then?
Which I'm not. Why are there schizophrenic people?
I mean, I just trans people are schizophrenic people. You see how the slippery slope fucking works?
Hang on, I
didn't say
Hey, John, hang on. I just want to.
You did equate that.
I just want Atlas. Hang on. I just want a straight answer. I don't know why I can't get a straight answer.
I'm giving you a straight answer.
I haven't asked the question yet. Okay, so if you are talking about biology, do you agree that biologically there's the male and the female of the species for humans? Is that something you agree upon?
Yes.
Okay. If somebody like Goose or Aaron, would you say that biologically, because they can give birth, they have given birth, that they are biologically women? Would you say that?
They're biologically female.
Female. Okay, what if you want to use her female? Okay, that's fine. They have biological.
No, because it has a specific meaning.
No, it's either or. But okay, biologically female. Actually, it's fine. Biologically female. Okay, they're the female of the species, correct?
They're biologically the female of the species, yes.
Okay, now let's say like Goose or Aaron wanted to transition and they become transgender. They're still the female of the species, are they not? That does not change.
Biologically, yes.
That has been the whole point from day one.
We are talking about two separate things because we're also talking about why are we saying trans men or men, or why are trans women women? Because I am identifying the gender aspect of this, which is what I think is being ignored.
No, it's not being ignored, but John has said that's the relevant portion, is that you have somebody who's biologically one way but identifies gender differently. Now that is a mental state, though, is it not? It's not a physical state. It's the mental state that the person is identifying with something different than what their physical biological state would be. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think that's pretty well should be ubiquitous. That's what I don't know how anybody could argue against that, to be honest with you. But
I'm struggling to wrap my head around the fact that we seem to be separating gender, or trying to separate the notion of gender 100% entirely from the concept of biology.
Yes.
You cannot have a 99.9% correlation between a gender and a person's biological state and claim that there's no possibility of causation there. There is a causation there. And the small number of people where there isn't causation, it's because something went fucking wrong. Something's not right.
Okay, that's where you're getting this wrong, is because a biological state, a biological male and a biological female, that is what you're signing at birth. We understand that trans people exist. We understand that they need affirming healthcare. We understand that these things help them in the long run. We understand that as gender is its own thing separate from biology. Yes, there is a biological female and a biological male, and a large portion of the time, the people who are born that way identify with the biological aspect they have. But saying that gender doesn't exist and doesn't change, and that these people don't identify with that, and that there's a problem with them for identifying with that, I think is fundamentally backwards.
But gender is something.
See, and your argument kind of disproves itself. Okay, you're trying to ignore the fact that there is a separation between biology, gender, or sex, and then gender. Okay, well then what is the problem here? If there's no difference, if they're one and the same, then why are people so upset if someone who is visually a different gender is coming into their private space? There is a difference between gender and sex, because I mean, gender.
That's what we've been saying, Aaron. That's what we've been saying.
The whole concept of gender is more cultural than anything. Why is pink always for female, blue always for male?
But hang on one second.
The distinction between
hang on,
you can have a tomboy.
John, one second. This is important. But Aaron, we cannot visually look and identify somebody's gender except through gender expression. That's it. There's no cues for that. But we can identify biological sex through observation. That's a huge difference.
You can't see someone's biological sex.
Sure you can.
Through
you know that someone is passing one way, you could see that when they're wearing clothes, you could see what sex they have. You can see their genitalia.
No, we can.
But exactly, how do you
No, Aaron, you missed my point. Aaron, you missed my point.
I'm just saying.
No, but you're wrong.
They're different. Gender and sex are different.
Aaron, you're wrong. No, that's fine, but you're missing my point here. I am saying that if I wanted to do a scientific study and I wanted to look at you under various conditions, I could make a objective determination what your biological sex is through observations, and I mean empirical observations. However, you cannot do that with gender, correct? I mean, unless they have gender expression by maybe clothes. But even then, how do you differentiate between somebody who's wearing a dress because they're a cross-dresser or they're expressing as female gender? How do you make the differentiation? Because through observation,
what the fuck are they identifying as?
But I'm talking about observation. How do you do it?
How do you do it? It's not as simple as that. There is the mental aspect. You can't look into someone's mind.
That's my point. Exactly.
So why should people be afraid of? I don't understand what you're trying to say here, and maybe there's a disagreement, because I think that you're thinking one thing and you're saying another, Steve.
No,
and I'm being 100% honest with you.
I'm really not. But you got 5 different people trying to step in here, and it's very difficult when you have that many people to hang out. Okay?
Yeah, obviously.
But I want to hear Aaron, because Aaron is a female that I invited in for this very reason. Well, go ahead.
Okay, obviously, there's a difference between the genders. Otherwise, why would one sex want to identify as the opposite gender? You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's a difference. If a trans male is trans male, then they want to be viewed and accepted and seen and as a male, because it's the gender roles and everything that they feel are them. Okay, and probably even the biological sex. I don't know. I'm not trans. I can't.
That's the summation of it.
Okay, let's grant there's a difference between sex and gender. Again, that model's fine. I don't have an issue with that model. Okay, that's not even why that's even on the table. But
okay, so what are we actually talking about here? What's the topic that we're actually addressing?
Let me try it this way. Let me see if I can explain it this way, because I think you're missing my point. Then we'll get to Excel. Let's say you have Aaron and she has a identical female twin. They're identical in every single way. But her sister, her biological sister, is now trans, but there's no expression, there's no anything. You just have their physical, no clothes, no nothing, just physical. How do you make that differentiation between which one of them is the one that's trans? How would you do that?
You take them on their word.
Oh, okay. So Again, that's the problem. So all somebody has to do.
No, it really sounds like it's more of it sounds more like an individual problem because when you're talking to someone, you should be able to ask them what they are.
You take them at their word, even though we have people that have
absolutely until they prove you otherwise.
But you have people that are misusing this. This is what John was talking about. That's the problem.
You know what people do? People rape, people kill, people do horrible fucking shit, but you can't just say that this person is held to a different standard than anyone fucking else.
And even then, if you take them
I do think you can look at someone to determine whether or not they could be lying. Okay, now to elaborate though, yes, you should take them at their word, but you should. I don't think it's out of line to expect to see certain, characteristics that would.
I can agree with that.
Go ahead, Excel.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
and like people who are okay, I'll shut up.
What I was going to say is, Atlas, like that's where I fundamentally disagree.
I disagree with them as well. I'm way disagreeing with them.
I do believe gender and sex are different, but I do not believe gender and sex I do not believe gender is completely removed from biology. The way I see gender,
I didn't say that.
Well, if you didn't, sorry, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll just explain the way I see gender, right? So the way I see gender, I'm borrowing from New Discourses because I'm a layman, but I like James Lindsay's approach, right? We all understand this idea that she is a very masculine female, right? That makes total sense to everybody. Do we all agree?
Who?
We should be accepting of
James
masculine females, right? Same thing we can say with men. He is a very feminine man. We agree with that,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So what we're saying
James
by
has been
that
on
is
this channel,
well, hold on. Like, yeah. So he's been on this channel. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, I understand. Like, when I think of gender, like, I get it, right? It's actually the liberal view that people like me and I guess Steve that grew up in the 80s and 90s learned to understand is that, like, yeah, like there's these set of traits that on average men have, and there's these set of traits that on average women have. And it goes from a range of feminine to masculine. And we should be acceptive of people that fall on this new spectrum, right? Doesn't make them any less of a woman, doesn't make them any less of a man. And I think part of this, like we're focusing on trans issues right now. But, I have no problem with the idea that people are trans, they choose to transition, and like, we should do our best to accommodate them into society.
I think we all agree on that, sure.
And I'm okay with that. It's just, I think maybe we draw a line as to where within reason is. My biggest issue with the whole conversation we're having, it's almost like we're missing the forest for a tree. This is used to promote the idea that somebody can be neither a man or a woman.
Which
that
to me is biologically impossible.
Any pronouns they want, right? They could be what xenogender was, like the latest one I heard of that came up that got popular. And these are showing up in academic journals. And this is the sophistry that I think me and Steve at least reject.
I agree, yes.
And I don't think the people that are promoting that are doing any favors.
That's the pushback
to the people that they say they represent.
That's what I think is causing another type of pushback to the Pride community by them interjecting these mandatory uses of language. Like here I have on the screen, John Hopkins pulls lesbian definition after uproar over use of non-men instead of women. John Hopkins University was defining lesbian as a non-man attracted to a non-man. Now, if anybody doesn't think that's odd or awkward, especially as a woman, I don't know what to even argue with them.
I think that is absolutely odd as well. Like that, but real quick, I want to ask you a question, XL. Like just a quick question and answer back and forth real quick.
Yep. I'll answer.
Oh, okay. One, is gender a social construct?
Yes, but not necessarily. Like I said, gender is a social construct, which is why we know it's malleable, right? But the reason we think it's malleable is informed by biology. That's my comprehensive answer to that.
They're not extrinsically unrelatable. There is some overlap there between gender and sex. You cannot absolutely separate them. Part of gender has to do with sex.
So just quickly, because I've been asked this question before, and my comeback to that question would be, okay, what came first, the biology or the social construct, or the social construction?
The biology.
Yeah, so the social construction is built upon the biology, and then the social construction reinforces biologically through mate selection.
No, social constructs might have used the biology as a framework to begin with, but as our minds and our intellect grew and our consciousness was allowed to roam a bit and we were allowed to think on these subjects, they evolved.
So we're
and
ascending out of
also
our
as
biology.
society changes.
You can't ascend out of your
well.
biology. You are your biology.
No, you are born. Well, yes, your biology you cannot get rid of, but your gender you definitely can change.
Okay.
If you feel one way, and you identify as one way, then that is definitely the choice.
But you do agree that change is a change of mental state, not a change of physical state, correct?
I've never said it was anything else.
All right. Let me ask you this, because I think we agree on a lot more than we seem to be here. But if a trans person was able to instantly change their body to the biological sex that their gender they want to conform to, so they're the same, right? So if a biological male who transitions to be a female, if she can instantly have a completely 100% female body, do you think that in every single case that's going to solve any kind of dysphoria or anything like that completely, or do you think they're still going to have some issues?
I think that fundamentally it will help. I think that it will definitely give them what they know that they are. It will help them identify with their true identity.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's going to solve that problem.
Okay.
That's a bullshit question, I got to say. Because
why?
Because it will solve
I think Steve was just trying to clarify.
Why?
Right.
Yeah. Why is that bullshit though?
No,
I think it's a good question.
I'm not saying you're bullshit for asking this. I'm just saying when you think about it, it's kind of a bullshit question because you're kind of insinuating that there's more going on here than just
I'm not insinuating. I'm not insinuating. I'm saying
and you don't take into account all the other.
I'm explicitly saying I'm explicitly saying I think there's more.
I mean,
I'm not even implying it. I'm explicitly saying I think there are other issues going on than just that, and I don't think that in every case.
That's the case for anyone.
Yeah. I agree.
That's the case for anyone
I
at any time.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's what I mean by it's kind of bullshit. You're trying.
I think you're right.
It sounds like trying to apply it as a unique problem or as a special problem, whatever, to people who change genders or whatever. When in actuality, that's an issue for everyone.
No, I think the reason why I'm stating that is that because I think a lot of the people that are having these types of radical surgeries are not having the psychological counseling they need to have first. And I think if a person is having the mental dysphoria, and it is as Atlas has stated and agreed, it is a mental state. I don't want to use the word mental condition because it sounds negative and pejorative, and I don't mean it to be. But it is a mental condition that they have something that they are expressing gender dysphoria and uncomfortability with it. That can be treated more times, I think, through a psychological approach than a physical. And so, yes,
fundamentally disagree. If we're talking about dysmorphia, I fundamentally disagree.
I said just not necessarily dysmorphia, but dysphoria. Because dysphoria.
Well, that's what gender assignment surgery is for. Is dysmorphia.
Dysphoria, not dysmorphia. Dysphoria is the mental.
Oh. Okay, so gender, that's what I'm saying. What we have gender assignment surgery for is dysmorphia, not necessarily gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is you mentally identify as one thing. Dysmorphia is that you physically are disgusted with what you are if you're not who you're meant to be.
So let me ask you one last thing, and then Goose has raised her hands. Let me get to her. And I know this is hypothetical, and I know he's going to go, "That's a bullshit question." But if there was a ability to have somebody who is trans instantly change to the body type that they identify with, right? They would no longer be trans at that point, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does that not eliminate transgender? Because a lot of people have this they've been talking to me on Twitter is, they want to get rid of all transgenders. They want to genocide them, and they want to do this. Is that not something that would actually get rid of transgender, but in a positive way? I grant that. But it would, if that's the case, then it is the fact that we are, I think, too radically taking steps in the physical approach and not enough in the mental approach. That's something that I do believe. I think that it should be more mental
I don't
counseling.
think that we have the ability to actually
no, you're right.
discuss someone out of the ability to be like, let me word this better because I just had a vomit of the mouth. Yeah. I don't think we have the capability psychologically. Like, you can't put a therapist in front of someone and then just convince them they are not what they are. This is why gay conversion camps and gay conversion therapy is a horrific tragedy
I agree
of
with you 100%.
human.
Let me get that out. I think gay conversion is absolute bullshit. I think reparative therapy is absolute bullshit, but I don't think it's exactly the same thing when it comes to the gender dysphoria.
It wouldn't be trans conversion therapy if we were to take this seriously?
No, because some of them might actually just be gay.
Okay, so if we put someone in front of them and they identify who they are properly, you would say, hey, okay, this person actually is gay and they're saying they're gay now, so like they're good. But if we went to someone who is trans and then let me get to the fundamentals of this. And then we had a trans person, or like, okay, this person is actually trans. You understand that like that's good now. You would have no problem. You just want people to have the proper psychological care.
Yes, absolutely. And that's 100%. One sec, that's 100%.
I agree with you. People should have the proper psychological lead up to whatever happens.
That was my point, is that I think a lot of them are just saying they're trans, especially at an early age, because of cultural and influential factors, especially with their families and friends, but they might actually just be gay. That's why when you do these radical surgeries, they are they're regretting it later on in life. That's why that's been my whole point on that. So I don't know why there's even pushback on that. But Goose raised her hand.
You should affirm people, but like at the same time, you have to make sure that they are cognizant of what is about to happen to them, because
I agree. Yeah.
It's their life.
Yeah,
like it's their entire life, and they need to be cognizantly aware.
I want to make it very clear. I absolutely believe, and this is where I differ from like, people always like Matt Walsh. I absolutely believe there are people that believe that they identify as female. They think like a female, and they're a man's body, or vice versa. I do believe that, absolutely. I don't believe this. Oh, nobody was born in the wrong body. That's why I differ with Billboard Chris. I do think people are born in something they do not identify as their correct body. I think that is absolutely something that can happen. So we're on the same page on that? Well, I know Goose wants to.
I think we mostly agree on this.
Okay, Goose. Sorry, I gotta get Goose in because.
So I just wanted to bring up. So I have a family member who actually has a child that is working through this right now, trying to figure out which direction to go in, and they're 8 years old. And basically my family member is trying to figure out, and the only reason I'm saying my family member and not saying if it's a boy or a girl or anything like that is just because I'm trying to respect.
Yeah, just
exactly.
In generalities.
Right. So basically they've been working through this, trying to figure out what direction to go in since they were 4 years old. They're in therapy. They're obviously, because they're at 8 years old, trying to figure out, do we end up doing hormone blockers? Do we not? Because in their eyes, you don't know the long-term repercussions if you do hormone blockers. Okay, let's just say hypothetically you do it, and then down the road, it changes them to where if they wanted to have children later, they couldn't, because there isn't enough like research and studies and stuff to show that if you turn that faucet off, relatively speaking, that later we don't know if you can turn it back on. We don't know if you do hormone blockers for this long, that you have a better chance, or if you do it at all, it's kind of
there's a lot of unknowns. A lot of unknowns.
Yes, exactly. So they're working through this process right now to figure out the best kind of transition. And sorry, my mind just completely went blank.
Well,
I think what Steve was saying is that with the therapy part, I think unfortunately right now, because of what's going on politically, also like within the media and everything like that, some people want like this quick fix, right? And instead of because in the past, I have a friend who is transgender, and she talks about how, she had to go to therapy for quite a while and have multiple like psychological testing done and everything like that before she could even get on hormones. And now there's people where you can literally do like a Skype call or a phone call and get put on hormones. And so I think that's
and there's people that are doing themselves. They're making their own stuff. Which is
I haven't heard. I personally hadn't heard about that part yet, but I just
there's some people that are doing off-label and all kinds of weird stuff they're advocating for. Yeah, it's bizarre, and that's dangerous, absolutely dangerous.
There is extremist groups, definitely.
Yeah, and those extremists, good, and they are extremists. They're very few.
Yeah, and when you look at it like that way, then it's kind of like I akin it to like condemning the use of like Dilaudid for pain management because someone might use it and get addicted and use it, drugs wise. Right. Yeah, I mean, you can't really do that. People are always going to do fucked up shit. There's no around it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But
I think the biggest thing right now, like at least my concern, just having a family member going through this is, and seeing so many children that are going through it as well, you know, on social media, in the news, everything like that. My concern is if
I'm going to be right
what
back.
Steve's talking about with the therapy part, you know, if you don't have proper therapy, and like Steve is saying, like, you know, children are very malleable, and they're, you know, as kids, you know, people say like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a firefighter, I'm going to be a dinosaur, I'm going to be a pirate, whatever it might be. And so I think right now it's kind of a scary situation, because you have some parents that are like, I mean, let's be honest, some parents are transitioning their children because of the attention they're getting. Then you have other parents that are working through the process, you know, I guess some would say like, kind of like you should, with therapists and doctors, and trying to figure out the best plan of action for their child, like with what my family member is trying to do right now. And sorry.
I mean, no, I have a great deal of sympathy for your family's situation, because the problem that you're faced with is it's
definitely hard real... because they don't want them to end up, they don't want to end up doing the wrong thing, and then later they end up realizing that this was just, quote unquote, a phase, just to put it simply.
And how do you but this is the issue, especially with around children, and I think it's one of the fundamental areas. Was we've not completely deviated from the topic, but I think the reason, the positives of the Pride movement and Pride Month, and the negatives of the Pride movement and the Pride Month hinge on topics like this. If the problem that we've got here is, how do we accurately identify which children, if we're going to go down that route, which children are going to benefit from the gender care? Now, it's a twofold problem. Firstly, how do you identify the particular child? And secondly, because this technology, in terms of what we're using the drugs for, what we're using the surgeries for, is so shiny new, we don't really know what the long-term effects. We can make it.
I apologize. I'm back now.
Oh, that's right, Alice. We don't really know what the long-term effects are, but there is absolutely the case where, and I'm not suggesting it's the case with your family, that's obviously not, but as you've identified, I think there's sort of like this new phenomenon of a weird form of sort of Munchausen's by proxy, you know.
Right. That's what I was talking about with the social media stuff. Yeah.
You can't end up.
That does happen.
You can't end up with these clusters where you've got a mum and a mum, one of whom is sort of what we would probably quite rudely have called in the 80s and 90s a butch lesbian, and the other one's a very traditionally effeminate lesbian, or you've got sort of like a set of transgender parents, or whatever the case may be, that have either conceived naturally because they've not gone down the whole transgender process, or they've adopted or something, and then all of a sudden they themselves have a transgender 3-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's a massive statistic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a massive statistical outlier. And our society is replete with examples.
Nature versus nurture.
What do you do when you have a situation, though, similar to this, where you have a child? Let's say there's a joint custody involved. Let's say the child's put them at age 10 or whatever, and one parent wants them to transition and the other one doesn't.
Well, and that's actually happened. Isn't there right now?
Yeah, that's actually happened. Absolutely, it has actually happened.
I've seen lawsuits
in California
over this.
and in Canada. Yeah,
there's a guy in Canada who spent time in prison because he won't affirm his daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we and this is I think a real big, if anybody takes away any from this is my biggest biggest issue, is that if you're not, I'm saying that you're criminalizing or not affirming the child's care. You are saying that you're not being, to me, you're saying that person's not being a good parent, when I think it's the opposite. I think that parent wants the best for their child, and if that parent doesn't think it's in the best interest of the child that they should go through these procedures at such a young age, that needs to be taken into account.
Right, because
I think you're correct to a degree on this. I also want to go ahead and say that we, in this example specifically, to further this conversation, we are taking examples of bigotry off the table, correct?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Because there are a lot of situations where people can't come out specifically, and this is a real life thing. I had a friend shoved into a gay conversion camp because they came out as transgendered to their parents.
Let's just get that off the table, because again, I really despise the Mormon Church when they had given money to an organization called Evergreen that did reparative therapy through electroshock therapy and chemical stuff, and I'm appalled by that. It is just mind-blowing to me. So when people
it's torture.
Yeah, it's I've absolutely been 100% against all that. And so when you have like specific, like you said, the actual bigots out there that think that somehow you can pray the gay away or anything like that, yeah, I speak up against that. That's something I want all people, I think, to have commonality on. And when people start, alienating allies by saying, "Oh, well, you're not gender affirming care to a 10-year-old," that's not the same thing. There's
it's devouring its own tail.
Yeah, and this is the problem. But this is the main crux when we're talking about some of the problems of the pride community that they're not addressing. That's one of them, because none of us here are bigoted or transphobic in any way, shape, or form. We are trying to discuss very, very just emotionally charged, not issues that are not yet resolved by medical or even psychological understandings, because we're not quite there yet. We have a long way to go, but we want the best interest for the child. In my opinion,
the best interest for everyone, I think, is
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll even accept that. Yes, for everyone. Yes.
I'd also just like to raise the prospective risks of the two. Like, we keep on equating things like gay conversion therapy, which I find abhorrent as well.
Good.
And sort of transgender conversion therapy. The idea being that if there's some sort of psychological pushback against, especially young children, they go, "Oh no, the child claims they're transgender. They are transgender. If you're trying to tell them that they're not, that's conversion therapy." And then
that's not the same thing. Yeah, that's
not what I'm talking about at all.
But other people's happen. Other people do.
We're talking about the philosophy and the political aspect.
What see, this is a thing you keep saying that I don't understand here, and forgive me for just asking for clarification. What do you mean LGBTQ philosophy?
Gender studies?
No.
Yeah, but is that LGBTQ's the philosophy? Like, is this a way people are living their life to a fault over? Like, are you telling me that this isn't a more nuanced conversation than as we've already demonstrated here?
I'm not saying that.
Philosophy is pretty nuanced.
Yeah, I'm saying it's pretty nuanced. Yeah.
I mean, what I mean by sort of I don't put all of these individuals, LGBTQIA+ in one group. The only reason I discuss them as a group is because they themselves,
they one big umbrella,
have decided to lump themselves into
which
one
I
group.
think is problematic.
It is problematic.
As a political, and probably to a slightly lesser degree than a political, but as a philosophical organization that wants to push forward around sort of things like self-identification, social acceptance. But I don't put them in one group. I think there is very real tension between these individual groups within that quote-unquote community. But the point I was just quickly going to make about sort of gay conversion therapy and transgender conversion therapy, and I agree here, Atlas, you're not saying that to push back on a child psychologically is conversion therapy. But there are people in the LGBTQIA++ community that absolutely are saying that's the case.
Yes.
And I would just like to, and that's another part where there's an issue, because the risks of a child, like if you've got a parent who thinks that their child might potentially be gay, and they don't want to let that child experiment. Well, what's the worst chance? What's the worst case scenario of that child experiment?
Yeah, there's no permanent physical thing.
There's no permanent
right?
physical damage.
Yeah.
They might go, actually, I wonder if I'm gay. I might go and say, do I like this dick over here?
Yeah,
no,
go ahead.
I
right,
don't
exactly.
like dick.
Experiment. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right, wait to see.
Yeah.
As long as they're not a moron and they strap it up before they slap it up.
And by the way, let's be very clear here. We're talking about high school level people. We all fucked around in high school. Let's be realistic here, okay? And with other people in high school, okay?
Yeah, I'm not talking about 5-year-olds.
Well, except for John. John, I know you were a late bloomer, right? But I'm kidding.
Thanks for that, Steve.
You're English.
Yeah,
you're more sophisticated. You waited till you're 30. Yes, I know.
I worked out all of my homoerotic fantasies.
He had a discourse first.
Yeah, just don't tell my wife. So no, my point is that the risk of sort of letting a potentially gay person experiment is almost non-existent. They might, if they're a moron, end up with an STI, which is no different than a heterosexual person.
Right, exactly.
Or worst case scenario, they might end up with a bit of a nicky memory that they don't particularly like later in life. However, if you don't push back on a transgender person, then the potential risk is fatal.
When it comes to, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. I was pretty much done. So.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when it comes to children, I 100% agree that we should see that they are fully taken care of to the best ability that we can, and that they have the ability to cognizantly decide for themselves. Now, I don't think, like, I don't want to put an age on this because I am not a medical professional by any means. I think that there needs to be an understanding and a further research into, like, at what point these people can make these decisions for themselves and at which point we should allow that to happen. I don't think anybody here would agree that, like, we should immediately allow children to, like, physically transition very early, or to even, like, the hormone blocker argument, as I've heard it, like, yeah, I can understand why people want it. I just think that the research needs to pan out more before this is something that people can sign off on. And I also think that it is in the interest of the parent to be like, hey, I think this might be a phase. Let's wait a little bit to see what's going on. And the other parent be like, yeah, let's wait. Or if someone is disagreeing, then, like, well, this is a natural human issue that we all start throwing mud at each other like apes.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with the puberty blockers is that I think they could potentially become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that's the fundamental root cause of this problem here is that there's a degree of uncertainty or confusion with the child concerned, right? And in a lot of cases, when they go through puberty, they get completely bathed in the hormones of their particular biological sex that they happen to be. And that, in the vast majority of cases, tends to iron out that confusion. They become much more comfortable with themselves. So when you put puberty blockers on, then what you're doing is actually extending the chronological period of time over which the confusion lasts. You're not actually solved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, actually, I think I actually agree with you here. So let me go to steel man you real quick. So what you're saying is that after puberty happens, then, like, we start seeing these people, like, what they're actually identifying with, because we can, I mean, and I'm not saying, like, once again, I'm not saying on anything, but I think I agree here that, like, these individuals will go like, oh yeah, with these puberty things, like, I am definitely a man, or I am definitely a woman, and I identify as such.
Yeah.
And that we should treat the people who, even after this fact, then go like, okay, this isn't right. What do I do now?
But I
100% agree with that.
I do as well. And but I'm gonna even steel man even further, because there is something to be said because it is easier if somebody does realize that they are actually female, in that mental state, and they do want to transition. It is a lot easier to do it starting earlier age. That just makes sense, right? But it's also so difficult to identify.
Right. What does it mean?
Exactly.
What does it mean to be gay or straight?
Exactly.
Before nature's bestowed you with your sexual drive.
Isn't that the problem, though? We know that it probably is beneficial to transition early. But
yeah, that's what I was saying. That if you were to for sure know, it would be beneficial.
Yes, but we don't at the present time. Let's try to say this. At the present time, we don't have the metrics and the tools to make that determination of a long-term status of that individual. We don't have it. We don't have the testing for it. We don't have the knowledge yet.
Which brings me back to what Goose was saying earlier. I actually think your family situation, it's as it stands right now, I would argue that objectively, the best course of action they should take in order to do the least possible harm outside of the therapy is nothing.
Right. See, that's kind of my thought is therapy, and then letting them express how they would like to physically, like with dress and stuff like that. Yeah, but like hormone wise, my personal fear is
nothing. So I should have been clear.
That's not.
Can we all agree?
And I guess the other thing is,
can we all agree?
Because I think the other thing too is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If somebody is a biological male and they want to transition to a female, and they do that younger, like, let's just take into like, for an example, like Jazz Jenny, she transitioned very early on, which mentally was good for her. Her family was on board and everything like that. But then when she got to be 17, 18 years old, decided to have surgery, there was a huge problem, and she's had lots of complications because of that. And so I think that is a prime example of one of the, I guess you could say, like, deficits of having somebody transition early on
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, just
right,
to be,
the
I don't want
male
to, be too
to female.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be too graphic,
yeah.
but the process of making a near vagina is essentially to invert the penis by its length, cut the penis vertically by length, and then invert it.
It's more an art than a science, yeah.
But it's still plastic surgery.
There's not enough tissue there. There's not
right, exactly, because you have to have the length to have the canal. I guess is the easiest way to put it for the YouTube terms.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, so
and Josh Jennings had other surgically typical.
Oh, Excel has been like raising his hand for a while.
I'm sorry, yeah, I know Excel. I do. There's two other things I want to address before we go, because we're already at 2 hours. So Excel, go ahead, and then there's two other things we'll address, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Because this has been great, by the way. This is what I think Non-Sequitur Show is about. This is great, dude. Seriously, this is great.
Yeah, this discussion I felt like is actually productive.
I agree. No, I love it, man. I really do. I thrive on this kind of stuff where you have people that have differing views that can talk about things, and I don't think anybody threw out a single pejorative.
Well, I think it's important to do this too because it shows like how important it is to have civil discourse. You know, like obviously there's gonna be people that agree and disagree and everything like that, but at the end of the day, like if people can't have these conversations, that just makes people get further apart, and then it's never going to happen.
And on Twitter, that's what they try to do. They try to throw out a pejorative to shut down the conversation, and that's why I don't bother with those people. Excel, go ahead.
Funny enough, I've just been listening in because, like I said, I'm the resident, I guess, right-wing person here today, even though I'm not.
Yeah, what are we? Yeah, by the way, can we say that I'm centrist? You're right, Goose.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh,
I would say that I'm kind of maybe center, but like slightly right-leaning because of I'm a very strong like firearms person, and
I'm gonna put you ultra far right. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely not like far right.
No, okay, you're right. Ultra far
Chimera.
right. Yeah. So I'm just curious, Aaron, what do you consider yourselves as? I mean, I think it's important because political things do dictate a lot of this stuff. They really do. There is politics involved.
Yeah.
You're
I consider myself to be a progressive. No, I would say I'm much more left-leaning.
Socially.
I've always been. I've always been, but I don't identify as a liberal by any means. But definitely leftist, left-leaning.
Okay.
But
You're like me, Aaron. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Probably,
yeah. And we don't care about John because he's in the UK. It means something completely different. So whatever.
Well, I consider myself generally to be a centrist. More of my positions are slightly leftward leaning than are rightward leaning, but I tend to have a higher degree of confidence about the positions that I hold in the rightward leaning sphere than I do in the leftward leaning. I think the leftward.
I'm both. I don't know. I go right.
Another chimera.
I go right and left depending on the. See, I don't think there's any litmus test. And this is what another thing that bugs me, but I don't want to step on Excel because he was trying to get some in here. So finish your thought, Excel. I
actually have 6 things that I took note of. I'll try to be quick on them. So,
sorry, I got 6 things. I'll be quick.
So Steve, you were trying to say like if we knew for a fact that if we transitioned a young person as a child that it will be beneficial for them. That we should do it, which is awesome. That's a hypothetical I agree with, but I have another hypothetical that I think it gets rejected to the point where even people that are studying this aren't even allowed to explore this avenue as scientists, which is if we could resolve gender dysphoria and dysmorphia, which by the way, the first time I heard the difference between the two was today. I always thought dysphoria implied the dysmorphia, but we don't need to argue that. I understand exactly what Atlas was saying about the difference. But if we could resolve it in a way that doesn't require transition or therapy and make them comfortable in their own bodies, like if we figured out a way to do that, I think that's just as
I agree. I brought that up. Yeah, I brought that up.
Okay. So I might have missed that.
I really did bring that up. I was like, look, if somebody could be comfortable in their own body and just realize maybe they're gay, is there anything wrong with that? But I think there has.
I think I even affirmed this as well.
But there has been some pushback from the trans community who thinks that's conversion.
Absolutely, they think even trying it gets papers shut down. There's been papers. We have evidence of papers, like valid scientific papers, that were pulled for no reason other than it had offended a lot of people, and that is dangerous, and we need to stop that.
Science should be based on science. It shouldn't be based on public majority.
Well, we can't even. This is something that occurs regularly. I mean, we've even got aspects of the deaf community who advocate against giving children cochlear implants because they see it as the erasure of the deaf community.
Yes.
I'm like that. If we're going down that kind of fucking nutty rabbit hole where you've got people arguing against the ability of children to hear because they think it's going to erase their quote unquote community, well, you guys can just get in the fucking bin.
I absolutely I know exactly what you're talking about, and I absolutely abhor that line of reasoning. I do think, you know,
in my opinion, it's the same as anti-vax.
Oh, we got Erin in here for that. She's all up in that. But, okay.
Oh, for real?
No,
speak.
No, she's not anti-vax. She's anti-vax, and she's anti-vax.
No. Yeah. I've been a vaccine advocate online and offline since like 2016.
Yeah, for years. Real quick,
thank you for your hard work.
We're going to get on the vaccine
more. I have a few more, Steve.
Two more, and then real quick, the Autistic Show became an initiate. Thank you, Autistic Show. And by the way, Autistic has mods on my other channel, but I don't think I ever gave her mods here until today. So I apologize for that. It's just oversight, but yes, Autistic has mods now. So thanks, Autistic. She's a wonderful mod for a lot of people's channels. I put a shout out to her. All right, XL, go ahead.
Yeah, she is. She's awesome.
Wonderful.
And she's my friend.
I love her. She's
my other
amazing.
thing is, whenever we use the term affirming care, I don't care what you put in front of it, gender or anything. I just don't think that's the purpose of doctors, to affirm care. I really believe that the term is being popularized as a Doridian power play.
I can see some reasoning there.
I think the idea that there's ideologues that look at it in this perspective is why I believe there are so many, especially children and young girls, being diagnosed with something they don't really have.
There's some hyperbolic language
they're
there,
considering it
right?
affirming care.
I've heard, if I can't get affirming care, then my child's going to, unalive themselves, kind of stuff. It's very hyperbolic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the social contagion is very real. We've got a school in Brighton, which is our equivalent of the UK equivalent of Portland. The school's got like 400 kids in it, and they're the K through 12 range. And like of these 400 kids, 70 of them identify as some sort of non-binary, transgender, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
I'm like, that's just such a massive statistical outlier. It can't be the case.
Yeah, it's more than just people coming out more. It's a cultural thing. It's been something that I think is more. Go ahead.
So,
hold on, let me throw out my last thing, and you can argue about both of it because this one's really short.
Okay.
Whenever we were talking about, like I consider gender dysphoria a mental disorder, but I don't mean that in a bad way. Somebody said something about being schizophrenic, and you see the same thing. And in my opinion, is I think people with mental disorders should be, we should be understanding of that, and we shouldn't look at it as a negative thing. And I know a lot of people on the right, I think they use the word mental disorder to be derogatory about trans people.
I agree.
And I don't think we should ever use mental disorder.
It's a very common thing.
I know what? I agree with you on that. However,
it was me who said the term schizophrenic, so I do feel the need just to quickly readdress that.
Okay.
I wasn't using it as a pejorative to say that,
no, I don't think you were either. I think it's whenever
I didn't take it as you were either. I was just pointing it out.
I was just trying to use it as an example of biology is messy and sometimes things go wrong. And just because something's gone wrong doesn't mean that you're worthless, doesn't mean that you're valued less. But we need to be able to acknowledge the fact that things have gone wrong in some circumstances. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it should be something that's put on a pedestal. It's actually something that needs to be fixed.
Well,
I don't think trans people need to be fixed. If that's what you meant there, I disagree with that vehemently.
Well, then why have new surgery? Yeah, why do they? Of course, they need to be fixed.
Because no, it's not. They're not a problem to be fixed. They are. Okay, look. Gender dysmorphia, having surgery for gender dysmorphia is to affirm their gender and to make them more comfortable on the skin. They're not a fucking problem, is what I'm trying to say.
I can't.
When you say problem,
terminology.
Terminology is inherently.
Hang on. Okay, so this is the problem that we run into. I see a lot, especially when people are relating it to like the right wing conservative radicals. These words do all have usages, and they also have what's called connotations, and they also have senses of the words. When you say something is a mental disorder, we are recognizing it as non-pejorative, right? We're not using it in the sense that this person is a mental nutcase or anything like that. Now, the far right, those ones that are out there with the Christian radicals, they're going to take it into a different sense. They're going to try to even equivocate and say that, oh, it's a mental disorder as something along the lines of schizophrenia, which John clearly wasn't doing.
Absolutely. It is the exact same usage of the language. They will co-opt that, and they will make sure that you know that.
But that's what I'm trying to argue, is that you have to differentiate between your interlocutor of how they're using these terms. And you have to be very clear that we're not doing that, but they are. And because it's the same word uses, but they have different senses. And this is another thing that's important. Look, just because you agree with somebody on the right doesn't make you right. It doesn't make it, because these are not litmus test types of things, right? And by the way,
absolutely,
if I agree with you, there's a reciprocity there that is like a biconditional. That if I agree with you, you're agreeing with me, correct? If I say 1 + 1 = 2 and you agree, then if you say 1 + 1 = 2, I'm going to agree with you. It's biconditional.
What?
So
right.
So if somebody says, "Oh, hey, Steve, you're agreeing with the alt-right," it's like, well, wait a minute. Then the alt-right would be agreeing with me, but at the same token, that would make them a conservative because I'm a conservative, or not? I'm a centrist because I'm a centrist, right? So the alt-right. My point being is that just because you agree with certain things doesn't make you that this big old picture that they're trying to make you. And that's what I think happens online.
Right,
on
but
Twitter.
I do feel like language needs to be, okay, I feel like the words we use needs to be chosen a bit more carefully here, because the people who do watch us, if there are people who are on that side that will watch us, they will use these and they will use them out of context to support their shit.
I agree.
And I'm just pointing that out. And when I point that out, I'm not saying anything against the interlocutors here because I know they're all honest. What I'm pointing out here is that usage is often co-opted and is often used by these people who are the people who are oppressors.
But the problem is that when you're trying to communicate, there are certain words to communicate, and unfortunately, a mental disorder is a way to communicate what we all mean by it, because we all understand what we mean by it, right? Because we're communicating with each other.
I wasn't disagreeing with that. I was disagreeing with it being a problem.
But
I agree with you, Atlas, but that does cut both ways as well.
I would rather argue with those people on the axis that they're using the terms wrong than invent new terms.
I agree.
I agree with that. Yeah. I'm just saying that like we're not inventing new terms. What we're doing is we're using the terms. I'm saying we should avoid certain language so that people know exactly what we're talking about and that we are coming at this in a certain way so that people can't just take that separately.
Go ahead.
I disagree with in the last 5 years. Absolutely no terms have been used to define.
What do you think about that, Steve? Can you use an analogy? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I can, but I want
agnosticism and atheism.
Yeah, no, I know. Goose has her hand up, so I want to get Goose in here because that's why I invited them in. Goose.
So I wanted to go back to the terminology thing, because I think part of it is people, like, for many years we've used certain words, but it's not being used because we're trying to use it in a negative way. And I think things are changing to where I guess Nathan was saying terminology is important and we need to think more about our words and stuff like that. And I think sometimes when somebody says something like fix or something like that, maybe saying something along the lines of like finding a solution to help the person or something like that. But because for so long we've just thought of fix just for like common people or whatever.
But isn't it sad what we have to?
Absolutely.
Isn't it kind of sad that when you have rational people, and I consider everybody in this hangout right now very rational people. Isn't it sad that we as the rational people have to police ourselves because there's dishonest agents out there? And yes, those people on the far right are dishonest.
It's absolutely depressing.
It is depressing. Yeah, because especially when all of us here have probably been at one time labeled something we're not, because they think that's because we're using that same term somebody else is using it, even though we're clearly using it in a different sense, and clarify that. A lot of dishonest
they grab
actors,
it and run with it.
Yeah, they don't have
cherry peek.
They don't have the ability because they're dishonest agents to go, oh, maybe this person isn't using it the same way as like a Matt Walsh would be, or a Ben Shapiro. I don't follow. I mean, Ben Shapiro. I've watched some of them stuff, and there's some things they say I think is funny, and I agree. And there's other things I'm like, this guy's an idiot, right? So it really depends on what the fuck they're talking about, that if I'm going to agree with them or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's something that you need to bring to a conversation in order for that conversation to be productive. It's one of the most important things that you need to bring to a conversation. Charity? Generosity of interpretation.
Yeah, charity. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I knew you were going to go with that.
Generosity of interpretation.
Yep.
If you can And
that doesn't happen on Twitter. That doesn't happen on Twitter.
Well, no, of course, but it's not geared for that. But just this conversation that we've had so far. I mean, and Atlas, I think out of everybody in this room, probably you and I disagree the most. Probably with Aaron as a close second.
I don't think as much as we think. I'm willing to defer.
What's so funny is even if you do,
we disagree. But out of everybody in this room, we disagree.
But even if you do, it doesn't matter because you
guys. I'm sorry.
What, you got to go?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I gotta sign off right now.
Yeah.
So
all right, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having your voice.
It's been a great talk.
Always a pleasure to have your voice.
Thank you for adding your voice to the conversation.
Bye, Aaron.
Yeah, bye, Aaron.
Thank you for listening. All right, bye.
Yeah, but the thing is that like all of us here have the best intentions, and I think that has to be a huge takeaway. Nobody's out there having bad intentions.
Absolutely.
At least none of us, right? I mean, obviously there's dishonest players out there, and I think that's a huge distinction to be made. We can disagree all we want. There could be some really poignant disagreements, but it's still what is the best course of action, right? We
right,
and I think that's the biggest thing. What is the best course of action? Who's this person coming in? I don't know.
Well, and I think too, like.
Okay.
If I think one thing too with trying to keep civil discourse going, and it can be hard when you have like the right extremists or the left extremists to like get conversations happening. But I think if somebody just automatically hears a word and thinks, because they're hearing it out of one person's mouth, they need to maybe just stop and say like, okay, well, hey, I just have a question. Like, what are you meaning when you say that term? Just so that I can fully understand.
Thank you.
And I'm not making an assumption off of what you're saying.
Right.
Like that's what needs to be said instead of somebody going rah, 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 and just going after that person, because then when that happens, they're going to shut down and not have a conversation at all.
I even put in the Great Debate community something along the lines about this hangout, and I said we're going to talk about the pros and cons of Pride Month. And somebody who I'm friends with it for a very long time that I disagree with on so many things, they're like, well, how could there be any cons? Well, we're discussing some cons right now. We're all agreeing on some of them. Nobody's against Pride Month. Nobody's against having
no idea is infallible.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. And by the way, we have another guest that just joined. I
tip my hat to you, Chris.
Chris?
Hey, how are we?
Hey.
Wonderful.
Have you been listening in?
No, I only just saw the message you sent after I sent, what time's it on?
Oh, no, the context must be horrible.
Well, we can start over again for you.
Yeah.
Another 3 hours. Let's go.
Let me my second bottle of wine. Another 2.5 hour stream. Let's go.
Let me say this real quick. So I don't want to talk about what I have on the screen right now that much because it's a very, very long thread and people can go read it. Follow me.
Yeah,
on
I saw this.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think for a second that you condone stuff like this. I just don't. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but this is the stuff that I think a lot of the Pride community just want to push aside, because obviously the people that are promoting this are part of the Pride community, but I think they're very small. And this is what happened when we had the pre-show last night when Red's Rhetoric came in and asked, "Hey Steve, do you think that because there's a small amount of Pride people that are pushing this agenda on children?" And again, I know the word agenda is loaded, but I mean doing this, explaining critical things about gender ideology and sexualization to kids that are not yet even understanding what the basics are, that is applicable to the entire community. And I'm like, absolutely not. I think that the entire community, for the most part, almost is against stuff like this. But it's a small amount that does, but that's what's causing the pushback from the far right, who's latching onto that to say, oh, we're going to apply it to the whole.
They're using it as a gavel.
And that is a fallacy. That's called a fallacy of composition. But that is exactly what they do. They're using it as a bludgeon to say, hey, look, this is what the real Pride agenda is. None of us agree with that.
It's interesting you say that, though, because it's most of the pushback I'm seeing isn't from the right. Most people I speak to who are on the right have the opinion. Look, I think you've got to have context in all these things. You don't want to have children at sexualized events. But I mean, if there's children who are at a Pride event, I don't really see a huge issue with that. I mean, you do
I don't either.
I would agree with that.
So what you're saying, Chris, is the people you talk to on the right are a lot more like me than, let's say,
Chris,
Matt Walsh.
But Chris, let me make
what you got to remember is people confuse the right or the right side of politics with the religious side of politics, and there's a big difference
because they are inherently ingrained.
But I gotta get to that, Chris. Let me make this clear. If it was just kids going to a Pride parade, I don't think anybody any reasonable person would have given a shit. The problem is when you have people in the Pride parade that are naked walking down the street, or over sexualize things in that particular trade.
And you are exposing children to these things.
And by the way, I can speak firsthand. I can speak firsthand on this. I was a child at one time, believe it or not. And I was in San Francisco. Yeah,
Holy shit!
Yeah, I know, right?
100 years ago.
I can't prove it. I got no photographs from back then, right?
Jesus was still getting his sandals at that point.
Everybody thinks I just popped out as is, okay? But I was in San Francisco, and we were on a family vacation. And I don't know, maybe it was, I want to say I was somewhere between 12 and 15, maybe I was a little older, 14, but it's still, a kid. And they had a pride parade, and of course they're all in the leather chaps and things of that nature. And of course, I'm not an idiot, but I'm just like, oh man, this is a bit much. But what I remember from that, there was a liquor store on the corner somewhere, and my dad just could not stop laughing. And the name of the liquor store was Suckers Liquors.
Oh my God.
Oh no. Dick's Sporting Good before Dick's Sporting Good.
I was just so embarrassed, right? Of course I knew it was that much, but I was like so embarrassed as a kid. My dad was just would not let that one go the entire trip. You want to go to Suckers Liquors?
Was there a big queue?
Oh God. but that's what it was up there, right? It's a lot. It's overt, which may not necessarily be kid friendly. And again, 14 to 15, sure, you're a little bit more mature, and I don't have a major problem with that. I was not an idiot at 14 and 15. But for a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old looking at a gay pride where they go over the top, I think that's where the pushback's from.
And there's a huge problem there, because what that does is that sends a message that the community is completely a sexualized one, or I don't want to use the term, but like into deviant style things. Most people who are in the LGBT community are just regular normal people who just want to live their life. They're not walking around in leather G-strings twerking in front of.
Isn't that what I said here though? This goes back
exactly.
This goes full circle. This goes first circle to my tweet here, where I just said you used to be the LGBTQ plus community was basically like, hey, you shouldn't give a shit about who we are sexually attracted to or sleep with, and we're like, yes, that should be the goal for everybody, Yep.
I think the biggest issue right now is
still is the goal.
It's true,
as a larger community. The core of it.
Yeah. True.
Steve, I stand by my comment that I think the problem is when you added the Q plus.
Well, I think we've all kind of maybe at least have a valuable argument that maybe they've included too many under one umbrella.
Right, and even when you speak with people, like I have friends that are gay and friends that are trans, and they're even upset about it, especially with like the maps possibly coming in.
That's just beyond. That's beyond. I don't even. Let me ask you this, Goose.
I have not talked to a single person that is okay with that.
How is that
at all?
Let me ask you this, Goose. How is that even a conversation? I don't know. I only know a handful of people that I've seen online that would be even somebody that would advocate for that, and they're all just fucking weird.
Well, and I think too the issue
about consent with things like medical procedures, where the children are claiming that there's advocacy for children to be able to consent to a medical procedure, there is a logical follow-on of, okay, well, they can consent to tattoos, they can consent to drinking, they can consent to sex and relationships, etc. We're talking about things that permanently affect their lives going forward. I actually had a thought about this earlier, and I wrote something down, and I don't. So, as a society, if it is determined that the presence of the LGBTQ institution is no longer a benefit and is a detriment, then they will be routed. It's a battle they can't win, and it is an existential threat generated by the actions of a few and the inaction of a great many.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree too. I think that's for any group. We see it in every group has something like that. That's
now
a more radical
ruining it for everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Goose, do you want to say something real quick, and then I want to address the live chat because I've been ignoring them, unfortunately.
I was just gonna say, I think right now, with everything, whether it's the children, the what is it, like in the younger schools, the preschool, like the parties, the what is it called? I'm drawing a blank right now, but where there story time, drag time, story hour, all that stuff. It's the extremists that are really ruining it for the majority of this population of people, and so it's hurting Go ahead.
I don't think it was. If it's just drag reading books to kids, I don't think.
Yeah, like
that would have been a big deal.
That's a problem.
I don't think that would have been a huge big deal.
But I mean, it's the extreme part of that, though. Not that idea as a whole. It's the extreme part where you've got the kids going and dancing and spreading their legs.
Right, exactly. Thank you. I was just saying
that's different. That is completely different.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you've got the extreme outliers that are literally ruining it for everybody. You've got you've got say somebody like Blair White who passes easily as a woman, and then you've got the person right now who's like, come into my Patreon, like, it's a
say it again. Jennifer Neviv, or whatever her name is.
Yeah. And then you've got the person who's like, it's not sir, it's ma'am. Like the outliers.
Yeah, they make it bad for everybody. Right, exactly.
Making it
there is a percentage that will take it too far. Media,
Yep.
Right. And those are the people that are getting the voice.
It's beyond too far.
And they're getting the platform.
It's actually insincerity, and they're courting controversy on purpose.
Yep. And that's what I think. If you guys, like I said, I really do recommend everybody go look at my Twitter and look at these 2 tweets that I had, and follow this one especially, because this is a very long thread, and I've seen these materials before. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen this stuff, but it is highly, highly inappropriate for children that are 6-7 years old. It's graphic, and anybody who thinks otherwise, I have to really question if they're a mapper or something like that, because you're talking to children that are 10 years or younger, and you're talking about sexual positions. That's inappropriate. I'm sorry.
Okay, wait. Can I please ask about this real quick?
Yes.
Steve, what do you mean about the sexual positions thing?
Yeah.
Like, are you referring to sex education?
No, physical sex positions, like missionary versus anal.
I understand, but like, I understand that, but like, are you saying this in context to sexual education?
No, I'm saying that there are books that are designed for kindergarten on up to teach young children about those things.
This is where one of our big things was, because I actually went through, I have like 3 pages here. So forgive me for just making this thing. There is a big thing that was going around that like LGBTQ plus inclusivity in sexual education around grades 6 to 12, that it was actually teaching children like sexual positions. And so when you said that, immediately my brain went like, oh my God, this is one of those things that has been fact checked and is completely fraudulent.
No, it's not.
No.
This isn't that age group though. This is literally like we're talking like kindergarten, first, second.
This is not.
Very young.
You see the book.
No, I'm talking specifically in the context of sexual education. Like I'm talking like sex ed, like you would get in schools.
I'm not talking about sexual. I'm talking about gender.
Like that's what I'm talking about. I'm saying that was a thing going around. I can agree there are some crazy ass books out there.
Yeah, we're not talking.
Sexual education for 6-year-olds should not encompass technique.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. No, I think.
Absolutely not.
A 6-year-old does not need to know the most optimal way to lube up an asshole.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So it's not.
Well, I have a question for everybody on panel.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like
I don't know the optimal way?
There should be an age.
Sorry.
No. My question is, when it comes to education, like the actual in the classroom learning stuff, like me personally, I just feel like at that age, like say 6th grade and under, I'm a parent of a daughter and she's going into 5th grade. And my personal opinion is that, and I understand there's some parents that will never have that conversation with their child, no matter what their age is. I get that part. Mm-hmm. The people that are very religious. I think stuff like I'm just curious your guys' opinion on
I'm for
the education part as a whole, and when it should start.
I don't have a problem with sex education.
Some of the things that are happening now.
I remember
it should be high school. Realistically, I think I
think 9th grade is appropriate.
Schools,
grade.
When it's schools, it should be, I think, from high school onwards, and it should be sort of factual, because I think that's kind of the point where girls in particular are going to start to have some noticeable changes happen. Prior to that, I think it should be at the discretion of the parents. If parents want to have those conversations with their children,
hang on. Let me clarify. Hang on. We have
exception.
Well, go ahead.
The only exception I would say is that children, they need to have sufficient knowledge to be able to report inappropriate behavior directed towards them by a third party that's not a parent.
Okay.
So the only thing I'd say there, Chris, is that I agree with you. but they also need to know like the absolute basics, the rudimentary.
I think that's a little bit different though. I think you can have safety education, which I would consider different from sexual education, which I think that can be as simple as some, that's your private area.
It's integrated.
I wouldn't have a category area. Yeah, there's probably a category area there. I might be.
It's integrated.
But no, I'm talking purely about sexual education as far as the health side of things go.
Yeah, let's just make this very
right.
I'd agree with that.
Usually, like when I was younger, they had it in like 7th and 8th grade. They would split the boys and the girls, and then they would have like, okay, boys, this is what you're going to go through. Girls,
yeah, I want to know what they told you guys. I want to know the super secret stuff that you swore that you guys had to do.
Here in Australia, we all just got lumped in together.
They might do that now. I graduated. I went through that 30
here in the States. The women.
I'm not as young as my picture looks.
No, Chris. All the women, all the girls, they all got together and they swore a lifelong blood oath. They could never tell the boys what was discussed in those super secret meeting. It's true.
The same thing happened in my school.
Okay, so like
my school,
sorry.
all the girls were given like tampons and sanitary pads, and then we came out of our chat with nothing, and all the boys were like,
what the hell? We got chipped. But I do want to differentiate because I think it's extremely important and critical thing to make the differentiation, because when we're looking at this tweet here, this is not sexual health. This is not anything about sexual education. This is gender ideology being taught in K through 6 and 6 through 12, which is completely different. That's what I'm saying is completely inappropriate. And anybody who disagrees with that, I really do question their sanity on that, because it's just bizarre that you're teaching 6-year-olds.
No, it's obvious some stuff is happening.
Yeah, but anyways, real quick, we got to get going.
And
it's been 2.5 hours. So go ahead. Goose?
Oh, I was just going to say one last thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I started seeing too is there's actually there was a guy that I was watching where he was talking about like the gender. I think it was some like I can't remember what it was called now, but they're like tweaking the terminology just enough to where they can get it into younger age groups, because it's not. They take out a certain terminology for it, and for me, I just feel like, okay, so that just to me leads down like a bad path.
Well, because it's the dishonest agents that want that in there.
There's
right?
a reason why. Right. Yeah. And I understand like possibly doing it a little bit earlier, because, it used to be that girls, especially with girls, I don't know I have 3 brothers, but I'm not having that discussion with them. Never did.
Boys kind of, boys kind of learn on their own a lot.
It happens.
We learn.
Right. But it happens. It used to be like around age 12 or something like that. Now kids are going through starting puberty a little bit younger, stuff like that. So I understand possibly doing it.
11 to 13 years old.
I think there's a difference between, like the health study, the health part of things, like it was called like health class.
Yep.
And then there was a little bit like when you got into high school, it was more of the sex ed type stuff. Whereas now it seems like the sex ed part is getting younger and younger and younger. And
is there
which I understand, because there's some kids that are partaking in things at a younger age. I get that part, but I just think it's kind of starting down the slippery slope a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I'm just going to defer to medical professionals.
Well, now, pretty much nowadays, sex education is Pornhub for most people, it seems. But so real quick, I want to talk on the.
Actually, sorry, Steve, you actually make a good point there, though, because we do.
That's not just a joke.
Yeah, no, because
that's true.
Kids all walk around with phones. That we've got computers with access to everything. For a lot of kids, that would be their introduction. To sexuality, and I think that's where the parents should come in, of course, but.
And you don't have parents that are doing that. They like nowadays there are still parents that parent, but there's still a lot of parents that are, if it's a single family household or they have to work a lot because of the cost of everything. Like, it is getting harder and harder to monitor your child, like on electronic devices. So
and that's why they need more parental controls for things. But anyways, like I said, we do got to wrap it up. The live chat for the last 2.5 hours, we've been paying attention intently. We're talking about differentiations for like medical stuff of what makes somebody male and female, which I think is a great discussion. But I just want to say I don't think any of it really applies to any of this. How they determine sex is kind of irrelevant. I don't really care what metrics they use. My claim has always been and has been is that all members are still either born male or female, and they're neither born both, neither born either. How that determination is made is much more complicated, and you can get into the gametes, you can get into the chromosomes, you can get into Klinefelters and Turners, but every single one of those cases, like Klinefelters only affects males, Turners only affects females. Every single one of those cases is either male or female, not both, not neither. That has been my position, and if that's another topic of discussion, we can have another later on. I'm absolutely fine with that. But I know a lot of people in live chat was talking about the chromosomes. Which I think is an irrelevant discussion as far as what we're talking about, but whatever.
Really quickly, one thing I do want to say it's super important, because there is a lot of the over the top bullshit that's happening, and yeah, you do have people pushing extreme agendas, and unfortunately, the people who suffer are actually the people in the LGBT community, and I think we need to be mindful.
Exactly.
That right now, those people need support. They need to know that, hey, we know that you're sane, and there's other sane people who stand with you. I think.
Exactly.
I 100% stand by that. So Chris,
because we don't, it's so easy for people to get demonized.
So Chris, I 1,000% agree with you. So let me ask you this: why is it there are people out there that are trying to vilify and demonize those people that have slight disagreements or whatever, and they're allies? They're trying to alienate allies.
They're not allies.
And the problem is without allies, nothing gets changed because there's not enough numbers, even in the LGBT community, to make significant changes that they're wanting.
It's a protective reflex, in my opinion, because historically there's been so much oppression towards the LGBTQ community, whatever aspect of it you want to latch onto. These people have suffered way more than they should have to get to the point that they are now. And as parts of the community that have become more extreme and they're making it worse for everybody around them. My point is that these people might be a little bit touchy in this regard because they either have direct-hand experience or they know someone who has experienced this. And so I think people will jump the gun and be more easily trying to shut down the conversation because they think it might lead somewhere more harmful.
Then let's grant that.
And never underestimate the power of stupidity and woke virtue signaling.
Yeah, let's grant what you just said. Let's grant what you just said. But I think Chris has hit the kind of the final nail on the coffin on that. When as far as the discussion is that when you're talking about those people that are alienating the allies, they are the far woke. They are the ones that are shutting down by regressive tolerance the conversations. You notice when we're having all conversation, not a single person in the live chat tried to shut down conversation. Not a single person in this hangout tried to shut down the conversation, whether you agreed or not. That's how it has to be to have progress. You have to test ideas.
Right. I tend to view it like this. I'm a father, I have a son, I have a daughter. I absolutely acknowledge and concede the really, really, really shit time that the gay, lesbian, transgender community have had. I consider it a point of shame, of unadulterated, unavoidable shame of what we did as a society to the likes of Sir Alan Turing.
Absolutely, that was a horrific thing. Horrific.
Horrific.
The person who was chemically castrated and subsequently killed himself, who arguably was one of the most important characters, one of the most important actors.
We wouldn't be talking here today if it wasn't for him.
To protect the Western world from fucking fascism.
Yeah.
I consider it a personal
Enigma machine. Yep.
mission that never, ever, ever happens again.
100%.
And in that mission, you will find in me an implacable and immovable ally that will stand between you and harm's way. However, if you support an ideology that tries to subvert my children, that tries to come between me and my children, then you will have made a mere mortal enemy. Alan Turing be damned.
I think that's acceptable.
My actions, where I fall on this issue, doesn't really have much to do with me. It is determined by my interlocutors, the people that I'm looking at. If you want to interject this overtly sexualized behavior into the school system and you stand behind it, then you're my enemy. If you stand apart from those people, then you're my ally.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think we all can agree on that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
And I think it's a kind of a brilliant way to kind of end that and just apply it to all groups. You know, I mean, I think that every single group has some shit things done to them. Obviously, the black communities, holy crap. I mean, horrible things that the America has done. Women's suffrage. I mean, look at first and second wave feminism. Everybody would have supported that. First wave feminism, women's rights and women's suffrage. Everybody should have supported that, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would go.
Let's not forget those Vikings. I mean, those Vikings were bastards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What are they assholes?
And look, I'll say this. I say this as a historian.
Made great ships, but a little bit rapey.
Yeah, a little bit. You know what? You can, if you look back, I mean, history is full of horrible things happening all the time. But I think one thing that we can all agree on, and I'm picking up a few different accents, but I assume we all live in Western nations. We are living in the best time, in the best places to be alive and to be a human in general, for health, for a lot of things, and also for rights. I mean, I don't think that there's, you go back years and there was, horrible, homophobic comments were sort of made under the breath and bad jokes.
Well,
and,
Jim Crow laws,
jokes, things like that. But that's I find that's all that doesn't happen anymore. Well, I think that we've got equality. I think we've got acceptance. I think the problem is when you get people trying to push past or push extremes.
Do you think the pendulum has swung too far?
The extreme part of things.
Or normalizing kinks.
Yeah. Do you think the pendulum swung too far? Because again, I live in California. And if somebody's gay here or black, nobody should fucking care. Nobody cares. We just I have not seen anybody give a shit about somebody's sexuality in the area I live in. It just doesn't happen. Is there racism? Yeah, there's some racism here, but as far as when it comes to gay or lesbian, no, I've never seen anybody care. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's so either behind the scenes or pushed, so far back because nobody wants to deal with those people, right? And so they've come a long fucking way.
Bigots everywhere, and there's always going to be bigots. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like someone for whatever reason. I mean, you'll get people who don't like, who will. Rally against people because they support a different sports team. That's just humans. We're tribal.
Yep.
Are you ever going to get rid of racism, sexism, and homophobia or completely? No, of course not, because humans are humans. But as a society,
we've done a damn good job so far.
Where we stand on it.
Yeah.
The worst thing and the most homophobic thing I'm seeing at the moment is from these activists. And I tell you, it's I think you get a lot of people who just want to include themselves in the group. It's some of the additional letters. Just
before you came in here, we all agreed. We all agreed the tent got too big. Yeah, it's one thing we all agreed upon before we even got in here.
People just want to get in the group, and I can tell you now, there's a lot of people who
power in numbers though.
They're a part of this that really aren't. And they're the ones who are doing the damage. I mean, it is not normal for someone to want to walk up the street twerking in a G-string in front of children. That is not normal.
That's not what
that's just trying to.
That's not what the pride community fought for.
And that
was my point. That was something they didn't fight for that. Okay.
No,
the community does not fight for that.
With other adults, that's fine.
Sure.
But you know what? The second that if one of those people, the second they realize there's a child there, they should be going, hang on. Whoa, no.
Yeah.
This is not for kids. Please.
Right.
No. We're here to express ourselves to adults in an adult way.
Which is perfectly fine.
Kids, please. I would be horrified.
Get your kink on. If you're an adult, get your kink on with every other adult that is consenting. I don't care.
Yeah, children should not be a part of the equation, period.
Exactly. And if that's the biggest takeaway we can take out of this, I'm happy with that.
Right. I think what's unfortunate too is that, like everybody's saying, you've got these extreme outliers and then what is happening right now because of social media and everything like that, those are the people that are given the voices, and then the majority
broadcasted the loudest.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the majority doesn't have a voice, so then you've got them going back and forth with each other, like, you've got the opposing extremists then going against each other, and you have the people in the middle that are just going, oh my God, both of them should shut up. So then the majority can move forward, but that's never going to happen.
I think the majority are more centrist.
Give me dirty laundry, definitely.
I think the majority is mostly like us. I think we're like the average person who's just talking about these things that wants to, the best for everybody. But most of us have been shouted down by not just the far right, but the far left, but not just by the LGBT, GP plus community, but allies and people that are against the Pride community. It's bizarre that the centrists like us, even though we might lean left or lean more right, none of us are radicalized.
Right.
And so are the bad guys.
You called me absolutely. You referred to me as a centrist. Gee.
I don't know. Well, you're from a land down under, so we don't know what the hell your politics are weird.
They're blue.
Yeah. I consider I guess over here, Chris, you would lean right, I think, in America, though, right? Still, even though you're right down there.
I'm on the right. I'm a conservative. Through. But no black. It's black or white. So I'm conservative.
Yeah. Okay. Which again, I don't have a problem with
conservatism and classic English liberalism have a huge amount of overlap as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, which is a whole different topic, which one of these days I love to do too, because I agree. Matter of fact, Chris, now let's leave with this, because Chris and I, we actually did a show together for we're not quite some time.
We need to. I think we need to bring that back.
I
was actually
enjoyed
about
that
this morning.
I enjoyed that.
We need to bring that back, because that's some of the most fun I've ever had online.
I was blown away how fun that actually was. So for the people that don't know, so Chris and I actually did a show.
Well, you've had more fun with Steve than on Pornhub, apparently.
Yeah, well, it was about how to properly lube up an asshole. John, has how to properly lube up an asshole. So if you want to join us to learn those things, no, it was called Over and Under, and it was on politics.
Watch, someone's gonna hear just that one
part. Right, there's a clip for you right there, right?
Someone's gonna come in right as you said that and be like,
oh my God, what are they talking about?
I'm so confident in my convictions that I don't have a pseudonym online. So thanks very much for that, Steve.
You're welcome.
Great.
No worries, man. No worries. But like I said, I just wanted to give a compliment to Chris because it was I don't really do much with politics, but we were able to have such a rational discussion on politics on things that we agreed on and disagree on, but it just went really freaking well. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Let's do it again.
Yeah,
let's chat offline and we'll organize it.
Yeah,
I'm definitely up for it.
I definitely want to have that conversation maybe later tomorrow or the next day. I'll hit you up. I do got to get going tonight. But guys, thank you for watching.
Super quick, Steve. Before you end,
thank you for having us,
Atlas. I know we disagree. I don't think we disagree a huge amount, but I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your generosity of interpretation. And I definitely think you're spirited and
I enjoy it. I think it's great. I think it's great. I really do. It was
good. I really enjoyed it.
I like his passion. I like the fact he's willing to argue and test his argumentation, and that he was willing to go online to do it. Dude, that's not easy to do. It's really not. So I love that.
Half the time I've been shaking over here.
I love it. I think you did exceptionally well. I'm serious. I know.
Thank you.
I know you have a YouTube channel.
I'd happily have a beer with you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah.
Same here, John.
I know that so go ahead and promote yourself, because I know you have a very small channel right now, and I don't mean that pejoratively. You have like 1 subscriber. I thought when I saw it.
I have like one video that I redid and reposted last night because I wanted to try to reach a certain standard.
Well, I think you should do it more often. I think you should. I really do. I think you're a voice to be heard. Whether we agree or not, I think
absolutely
your voice to be heard. Yeah.
And anytime you need someone to fill in, you just hit me up, because I love having these conversations, because honestly, I think I learn from them more than I espouse anything that I personally hold.
Well, we'll have some philosophical.
Well, and I think even if it doesn't make somebody change their mind, I just think overall having the civil discourse with people is important, because at least it makes you think about things when you go into the next discussion, like whether it's like a topic or a specific terminology or whatever it might be. It just makes the next discussion a little bit easier, or it makes you think a little bit more before you speak, or it's just so important to be having these discussions right now, because
100%.
so many people don't want to, or feel they can't, or think they're going to be vilified.
They're afraid to. They're afraid to, and that's
people just want to stay within their bubbles. And the best thing we can do is have conversations with people we might disagree with, not to change minds, but to understand why people think what they think. I think one of the best conversations I ever have are with people who have got a completely different idea. We can have the conversation. At the end, we may still not agree. We might maintain our position, but at least I understand why people think that way. And I think that's important.
Yeah. No,
it's totally okay to agree to disagree. Just doing it politely, or at least trying to.
Well, we need more voices.
With people who you disagree with.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able to sit down around a table with people, have a discussion about topic A, potentially really fundamentally disagree, and then draw a line under it and have a conversation about something else, and decide that that person isn't like the reincarnate of Hitler just because you disagree with them.
Absolutely.
Argumentium ad Hitlerium. But yeah, so we'll all get with you. We're like I said, we'll talk. I know we got some philosophy to talk about, so we'll do that on my other channel. Somebody in the live chat talked about Caffeine Corner. I still do Caffeine Corner occasionally when I have something of interest to talk about. And Caffeine Corner is another channel show that I do. We're talking about more along the lines of things like how to talk about narcissism and how to talk about Karman triangle, Maslow hierarchy of needs, things of that kind of nature, where you have
that's lessons to be learned.
Yeah, I think all that stuff's important. The triangulation, things we've all experienced with other YouTubers. We see a lot of these patterns. So I use Caffeine Corner to talk about how to recognize dishonest agents and do proper critical thinking. Because I think everybody in here, again, and I do mean this very sincerely, are very rational freaking people that are using critical thinking to formulate their positions. Whether they agree or disagree, they're at least thinking rationally to formulate an opinion. What else can you ask for? That's just that's the whole basis behind this fucking channel, even. So anyways, I got to wrap it up. Anybody else want to have a last word? Ghost, you got anything going on? And by the way, if you guys don't know who Goose is,
I was just going to say, I'm looking forward to having the discussion that we talked about having. And it would be interesting to have I see your name on here as something else, but I think you're
Atlas.
Is it
Atlas?
Atlas. Okay, I'm sorry. But I think the discussion, Steve, that you and I talked about having in the future about sports and stuff, it would be interesting to have him in as well, just to have, because I believe he'll probably have an opposing idea, or just
for sounding board. You want him as a sounding board because Goose and I, we're going to have a discussion on the trans in sports in a little more detail, a little more in depth that I didn't really want to go into in this particular episode because you can spend 4 hours on that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's too big of a topic to actually, because it's such a blanket.
Correct.
But final thoughts here on my end, I guess. Wait.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to talk about it now. Just like in the future, when we do that, it'd be nice to have you here if you could.
Yeah.
No, anytime. Steve has my DM on Twitter. Just send it to me, and I will be there on call. Just.
I just want to get Excel 2 seconds, and I want to give Atlas the last word because he's the guest here because I have his name on the title. So, did you want to add anything real quick, Excel?
Oh, XL dipped out.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, have the last word. Say what you got to say.
Subscribe to Hereticals.
Go subscribe to Hereticals, where you can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go watch them. I actually love your show. I really do. I just wish you had a time zone that worked. Can we do flat Earth? If we had a flat Earth, we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I would love to debate flat Earth myself.
Oh, we'll have those discussions. We'll have more. We have those. We're gonna have flat Earth discussions on here too. Even though it drives me fucking crazy.
Reds, where are you, Reds?
Let me at them.
Chris. So go subscribe to Chris. Hereticals, great 6-pack program in the middle of the night where he talks about all kinds of stuff. I love your show over there. But anyways, Atlas, final thoughts.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here, and to the audience who's listening to this. Once again, my YouTube channel is Owls Aren't Birds. I am very small, a single video, and as Steve pointed out, a small, singular, lovable subscriber. So if you come and give me any criticism, I am more than happy to hear it. Not necessarily for subscription, just for the viewers to actually come in and actually offer something to the conversations that I might be having.
Yeah, 1 sec.
Thank you.
I did put your. I'm pretty sure I put the video. I think I don't know sure, but I think I might have been your first subscriber. I think you had. Did you have 0 or did you have 1? I think you had 0.
I have 1.
Yeah, that's me. I think, isn't it? I think that was me.
I will go and subscribe and watch your video.
I think it actually was me. I did I put in the video description? I could tell you because I
just went to subscribe.
Yeah, can we have a link? Because I'm looking for it. I can't.
Yeah, can you put the link?
Owls, not birds, and I get loads of BBC documentary stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I see that. So I think if you just type in "Owls Aren't Birds," just spaced out and like all lowercase, a video should pop up, and it's a response to someone by the name of Orthodox Kyle. It's a response to a video he made.
Let me see real quick.
Yeah, I've got you. Boom, you've got 2 subscribers.
You got 2. You literally doubled. You've doubled your subscriber space by being here.
It's literally if it's YouTube.com.
Oh God, joyous day.
Dude, at this rate, man, you're going to get monetized in no time, like 3 years.
Holy shit! I can't wait.
Oh, okay, yeah, here it is. Am I?
Yeah, offer any criticism you see, because honestly, all I want to do is improve my content, and honestly, this is something that is important to me. I mean, heck, I'll try not to post any gameplay footage on there, but no promises.
My wonderful mods already beat me to it. See, look at that. They're amazing. They already put it out there, so go subscribe to him. We'll be seeing more of you, I have a feeling, Atlas. I really do. And once again, I really do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart that you were able to go on Twitter, have some disagreements, and able to go, you know what, Twitter sucks for this. Maybe we do have some common ground. Let's go online and discuss. And I cannot tell you how refreshing that freaking is. I mean, it blew my mind, man. I'm praising you like you wouldn't even believe right now, because I have little I freaking see that.
More often than not, like, we actually sit.
You have 5 subscribers.
I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone now because I do have to run. But great chatting, and I think Chris.
Yeah, I got to end it. So with that, Alice, we good? We good to end it?
Yeah, we're good. Sayonara, guys.
You guys can stick in here for if you want, but I do have an outro. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching the Non-Sequitur Show. This was one of the better episodes we've had in a while, and the ones that I enjoy, where everybody can kind of get together and have conversations on topics that people generally are not going to 100% agree on, and I love that. I want to have topics where people don't fully agree, because that's interesting. If everybody sat there and agreed with each other, it would be very boring. So anyways, I do want to put a shout out to all my wonderful subscribers, the members of the channel, my mods, and to everybody. Have a happy Father's Day. If your father's still alive, appreciate it. Mine's not, and he was a wonderful man. He was somebody that I looked up for, and I have nothing but praise for him, and I miss him every day. So if you still have your father, say happy Father's Day to them. Okay? And with that, thank you for watching.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Bye.